Excellent.
Yes, sir, Chair. We are ready. Please start at your leisure.
Thank you. Okay. So, thank you, everybody. I call this meeting of the regular meeting of the Cambria Community Services District to order. We have a quorum, all 5 directors present. Staff present are Chief Hollingsworth, Constable Timothy Carmel, General Manager John Weichel, Finance Manager Pamela Duffield, Acting Board Secretary Haley Dodson, and Pros Chair Steve Niffen. And right now we're getting a whole bunch of attendees coming in, but I'll announce them later after they've had a chance. I see some hands up, so why don't we commence the Pledge of Allegiance first, and then I'll call for your hands. Is that all right with everybody? Just to get the official start.
Mm-hmm.
No?
I can't understand you.
Yeah, your microphone or whatever is not good. I can't. I have trouble understanding too. That's what we're. I think our hands are.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right,
It's very
get
muddy.
that right here.
Yeah.
Haley's
The
giving
hands
us
are
a
up.
help here.
Yeah. Okay.
Something. How about now? Is it still faint? Or is that going through?
It's not particularly distinct. It's very muddy. It's kind of like you're talking inside a box.
Huh. All right, well, let's see. So we'll officially begin after we get this thing settled.
Okay, it's getting better.
Getting better. Yeah.
Oh, maybe, I wonder if this guy is our friend here. Is this the problem? Hello, Mary had a little lamb. Hello, everybody. How's this? Is this better? A, B, C.
A little better.
The volume could be better.
Oh, okay, a little more on the volume. You keep talking. What can I do? Mary had a little lamb. Okay.
The attendees are also not seeing gallery view. I think that's something that Ms. Dodson needs to adjust.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's make sure the microphone issue is resolved. Are you all good with me? Raise your hand if you're not.
No, it's much better.
It's better.
Good, okay.
Not
Okay.
perfect, but it's much better.
Thank you for that. So we'll resolve the other question and then we'll restart the meeting. So let's see. So Karen, I don't know who's communicating. Someone will need to let you know that they can see the gallery view.
My husband's in the other room. He said he couldn't see gallery view. Let me check with him real quick.
Okay.
How's it going, board? This is Hyland with AGP, and we can indeed see gallery view on public view.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, AJ.
Let's do that.
Good.
Okay, this time is for real. So here we are. I call this meeting of the Cambria Community Services District of the Board of Directors to order. All 5 directors being present, we do have a quorum. Present also are Chief Hollingsworth, Fire Chief Hollingsworth, our Counsel Timothy Carmel, General Manager John Weigold, Acting Board Secretary Haley Dodson, and Steve Niffen, the Chairman of the Pros Commission. We are also developing a large number of attendees, and I'll announce those later. So if you'll please be so good as to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let's see. Today for the President's Report, first of all, welcome to everybody. It's always nice to see you all here, and I'm happy to see our growing list of attendees as well. The main issue here that's occupied my time, and also Directors Stidel and Dean have been preparing articles for the Cambria CA online newspaper to help folks out there in the district understand a little better about the proposed rate increase and the related 218 protests. So I would like to direct people who are tuning into this later or see it later, and our friends out there in the audience, you might want to, if you haven't, you might want to take a look at the Cambria CA online newspaper and see what we've put forth so far. Excuse me. It's come to my attention that there are some issues regarding undelivered the rate increase announcements, along with the protest form that was enclosed, that there have been some problems with delivery. So I've asked GM Weigel to help to advise folks as to what that situation is and what we're doing about it. Mr. Weigel, would you please?
Yes, thank you, President Howell. Just a reminder that all our guidelines, which I'm going to outline in a minute, are posted on our CCSD website at a special page, which is www.cambriacsd.org/proposition-218. Now, if you don't want to remember that or memorize all that, you can just go to the home page for the CCSD web page, and on the very front page in the carousel, that's the stories that constantly roll from one to another. It's right at the top of the page there, so just wait and click over to Proposition 218, and it'll take you to the page. And if you scroll down to related documents, you'll find CCSD Resolution 14-2009. This is attachment A that outlines all the guidelines for the submission and tabulation of protests in connection with rate hearings conducted pursuant to Article 8D, Section 6 of the California Constitution regarding related noticing. So we've been following those guidelines in that resolution as it relates to our Proposition 218 process and the protest process. And as part of that attachment A, paragraph 6, which is notice of proposed rates in public hearing and notice delivery specifically, in paragraph 6C, we are following that guideline, which says, if the U.S. Postal Service returns any notice to the CCSD as undeliverable and provides the CCSD a forwarding address, the CCSD shall mail the notice to the forwarding address. But its doing so does not extend the time in which protests may be submitted with respect to the proposed changes that are subject of the public hearing. So what that all means is, if we get a returned envelope and it has a forwarding address on that, we will remail it to the forwarding address. And that does not extend the date by which a protest is due. That is still due by the hearing date, which is May 19th, 2022. We are, however, at CCSD going an extra step and doing research internally to see if we have that address in our existing database and or the parcel records. So we are going a little bit beyond what we have to. It's not a significant number of returns at this point, and so it's manageable with the staff here. So President Howell, unless there are further questions, that concludes my report on that.
Thank you, Mr. Weigel. So moving on, let us go to item E here, the agenda review. That'll be additions and deletions. Do we have any from the board, folks wishing to make any changes? Yes, Director D.
I think because there is a time issue with responding to the projects proposed for community project funding via Congressman Carbajal, I would request that we move agenda item 7D up to the first item under regular business.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely do that. Anybody else want to make any suggestions, changes to the minute, to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we can move forward. This will be to the board member communications. And Director Steidel, I believe you had something you wish to share with folks. I'm sorry, you're still
Actually,
muted.
President Howell, you covered it in your remarks. I wanted to remind people, if they weren't already aware, that there are articles that are published in the Cambria CA. Today's publication was the third in a series. The first addressed how CCSD obtains its interviews and what the structure or a special district is. The second, which was published on April 7th, and is still within the website there, is discussing the wastewater plant and the proposed rates. And today's article was specific to water. So there's a great deal of information there. And that same information, by the way, is available in reporting features that are on the website, the district website that GM Weigold referred to. So while you're there, if you're looking at anything related to Prop 218, you can also find some of the same information about what the proposed rates are intended in terms of going forward. And the articles in the Cambria CA also give you some very specific information about what was accomplished over the past 3 years with the rate monies that were received. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Steidel. Yes, Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Howell. I was going to follow up on what Director Steidel just said with regard to the item that you posted last week at Cambria CA. It was a rather lengty one, and at one point you did make an effort to describe, or at least briefly describe, some of the projects that were addressed as that used the ratepayers' monies to, especially to make improvements at the wastewater plant. So I want to express my appreciation for you doing that, and hopefully members of the public have had the opportunity to read that and maybe hopefully feel a little bit more understanding of, at least we have made an effort to use the ratepayers' money in a constructive fashion for in areas that we stated we were going to do that, basically infrastructure improvements. So, but that's not what I wanted to mention. I briefly wanted to mention the fact that normally I happen to be the liaison to the Cambria Forest Committee. We usually meet on Wednesdays at 5:30, which I would imagine sometimes can be inconvenient for people. So this week we rescheduled the meeting, and it's tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And so we talk about all items that relate to forest health, addressing the needs of the forest, how important the forest is to us. When we have presentations, that type of thing. So if it's more convenient for attending tomorrow, the meeting's at 10 o'clock. It's a Zoom meeting, and you can just go to CambriaForestCommittee.org and get further information there if you wish. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Let's see, do we have any other board member communications here? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready to move forward to the commission report. So, Mr. Niffen, this is for you. Please proceed with the pros commission report.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. First of all, I want to just say, man, you guys have a lot of stuff on your plate right now. And I appreciate the efforts you guys are putting into it, really. And it seems like we go through this every so often and somebody has to deal with it. And it's now your guys' turn to deal with it. And whatever everybody is saying out there, some of it's true, but it's not all true. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate you guys doing it. And so I'm going to give my presentation pretending like the stuff I'm doing is the most important thing on the plate, but I realize that it is not. All right. So first of all, one of the fun things that we've been talking about at the pros is the bikes, lots of bikes going on. Kermit Johansson, one of our members, is working with some bike people, getting a group together, trying to tie the bike trails around town and move people without their cars from one end of town to the other, not just locals, but tourists too. And we see with the building of the electric bikes that the need is developing. So we're trying to stay on top of that. Even though that might not fall in our jurisdiction, we think it's important that we stay abreast of it and try to participate in that. One of the other things that we talked about was the $20,000 that we had earmarked. And there was some discussion and we've tabled it. We don't want to spend that money without some more direction from the board, maybe. That would be helpful. So we're just kind of waiting to see what you guys think we should do with that. We're not opposed to saving it, even though we questioned whether governments can actually save money or not. But we don't want to just spend it frivolously making something up when we don't really have something dire right now. We talked about buying, after the bathroom is built, there's going to be plenty of things to spend the money on, but at this moment in time, not right now. The other things that Carlos brought up at the meeting was the Vets Hall and that money that's going to be required to take care of that building. That's going to be an important thing for the whole community to participate in. I personally don't feel that that is solely government's responsibility to take care of that building. Lots of us use that building for a myriad of reasons. So at some level, we're going to have to come together and figure out how we're going to take care of that. Other than that, you've just got on the consent agenda, the skate park MOU. So we're excited to see that going forward. The skate park people are still plowing forward. They had skate day. They made $18,000 that day. They made another 6,000. They're somewhere over 400,000. So once the MOU is going and the engineering is starting, we will actually see how much it costs and if it's possible to actually do this project. I can't believe it takes this long to actually do it, but we are finally here. So other than that, I just want to thank everybody for their efforts. Thank you.
Mr. Niffen, are there any questions from the board or things that communications that folks would like to say to Mr. Niffen before we go forward? Okay, seeing none, let me just make a brief, I'll take your presidential privilege. I really do like the idea that you guys are doing the bike trails. I'm only speaking as one board member now, but in my opinion, that does actually fall within your charge if we define it in a broad way. So thank you for your report, and we'll try to provide you with some guidance in that 20,000. And I also wanted to call out and thank you for your suggestion that perhaps maintenance and improvements to the Vets Hall could be something that could be shared by not only the CC, by not only the district, but the other community organizations that use the property. So I think that's a very good thing. In fact, I'm looking forward to more public-private cooperative efforts as we move forward. And these are things I think that pros can help us with. Okay, that's the presidential privilege. So now back to the order of business. We are now ready for public comment.
Excuse me, President Howell.
Oh, yes.
I just want to make a brief comment that often humor isn't something that takes place at board meetings. So I just want to say that every time Mr. Niffen makes an appearance, it usually puts a smile on my face during his entire report and an inner glow of enthusiasm for life. I just wanted to add that because I don't know if the rest of this meeting will provide that. So there we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer, and I'll second what you just said, Mr. Niffen. We do really appreciate that energy that you bring to us. So we're getting ready for the public. So as a reminder to folks out there, this will be for comment on items that aren't on our agenda. And if you wish to speak on something that is on the agenda, you would want to wait until that item is called. Let me just let everybody know a little bit about who's here. We have a total of 10 out there in the audience, or actually a few more because we have Crosby and Laura Swartz, Christine Heinrichs, Alan Dean, Dick Clark, Donald Archer, Elizabeth Bettenhausen, Gordon Heinrichs, Julie Amadei, Kathy Tanner, and Tina Dickinson. No doubt others will be coming in and out as things progress. So at this present time, we'll have the public comment, and that will be Crosby and Laura Swartz, followed by Christine Heinrichs. So yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Good
Welcome.
afternoon. Can you hear me? I guess. Good afternoon, board and everybody. Niffin's kind of a hard act to follow, but I'll try. Okay, the thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, I have a couple of concerns about the rate increase. And since that's not on the agenda, I'm going to speak about it now. The first thing, I'll start with the latter years. Year 4 and 5, you're putting out, inflationary increases. But unfortunately, from what I'm reading, there is no cap at all on that. And the way the inflation has been hitting right now, it's what, 8.5 this year? I'm hoping, or would hope to have a cap on that, because in the past years, there was a 4% cap on the rate increase inflationary. So anyhow, that was one of my first concerns. The other concern I have, I was looking at the packet that you sent to me in the mail to sign for protests or whatever. And under the fixed water service charges, I noticed under the commercial, in the first year, they get a rate increase. On the second 2 years, they don't get a rate increase. Now the residential people do, but the commercial don't. And I don't know if that was just a slip up or if there's some reason that the commercials with 1-inch pipes and larger are not getting an increase the second or third year. So maybe you could look into that. The other thing, and this goes back to the 218 protest, which we all participated in. And the thing is, there was, all 3 of the enterprises funds got raised at that point. And each enterprise fund from that last increase, from what I'm reading, because I do have a copy of Handler's report from 2018, that there's like 600,000 to 800,000 per enterprise fund that was raised in the last increase. And that's been happening now for 3 years. So there's like, 700,000 per enterprise fund, if I'm reading this correctly. And I didn't have a chance to look at the online newspaper. But my question is, we've been collecting so much money. I mean, it's over millions of dollars for those 3 enterprise funds. And I really haven't seen that much improvement. And I also have the copy of all the CIP lists. And it seems like there's a lot of them on there that, connecting the electricity hasn't even been looked at. So that's my 3 concerns. No cap on the index. Anyhow, you heard me. Like I said, Niffin's a difficult act to follow. I'm sure I didn't bring too many smiles, but that's my story. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Swartz. And let me jump in here before we start with Ms. Heinrichs. After we've had the public comment, if there's anything that it seems might be useful for the board to share with the public or to answer questions, we'll do it at that time after we've received all the comments. So yes, so this will be Christine Heinrichs, followed by Tina Dickinson.
Thank you. I'd just like to bring everyone's attention to the fact that another significant meeting is starting at 5 p.m. today about the proposed floating wind farm off Cambria. You can find information at the BOEM.gov website. There'll be another meeting on Tuesday morning at 9. Wind can provide electrical power to transition from fossil fuels. And LA Times columnist this week wrote that the only thing we should be talking about is the climate crisis. 4 of the energy experts who wrote the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report said there is no time to waste, that we should focus on credible commitments to public policy, private investment, and innovation. Let's focus on what matters, deploying clean technologies we know we need, implementing a coherent climate policy, laying the groundwork for future progress, and creating a just transition that shares the benefits of a sustainable energy system. The area off Cambria poses special problems, however. These enormous floating turbines would be anchored more than half a mile deep. The onshore footprint of the facilities required to assemble and maintain them will be substantial. Now is the time to learn about what is proposed and have your say. I encourage board members to make the effort to conclude today's meeting before 5 to allow them to attend this meeting. Cambria can be a model community to which others can look for leadership in the energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrich. Now we will go for Tina Dickinson, and I don't see any other people at this point.
Thank you, President Howell.
Welcome.
First of all, I would like to thank the CCSD for including a protest form in the notice of rate increase mailing. I am very unclear, though, about the process that will be taking place at the actual protest count. We are in this we're in a virtual situation. We're not in an open situation to see how this is going to be conducted. I would like to know if the district has reached out to the county clerk recorder's office and or the League of Women Voters so that we have oversight. How is this process going to be handled? I mean, I've been in New York for two and a half weeks, so I've been away, but I've been kind of keeping up as best I could whenever I had time. So could someone please elaborate on how this process is going to be taking place and how the public has a sense of trust? We've always had an issue with this, but we've done, over the years, it's gotten a little better. Right now, I'm at a loss to know what, or in the community, really, as to how you plan to deal with this. So I would like to be enlightened on that. And also, I read that a couple or some people did not receive a notice of rate increase who live here in town. I've advised them to contact the district, which would make the most sense. Hopefully they've done that, and there's been some resolution on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. Do we have any additional public comments? Okay, we do have some written public comments. So Ms. Haley, would you be so good as to read the written public comment for us?
Sure. Actually, one of the members of the public is attending, Donald Archer. I can bring him in to read his comment.
Okay, that would be good. Yes, Mr. Archer, would you be so good as to read your comment to us? You need to unmute. Good. Welcome, Donald. Here we are. I see your hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. You're good.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I wanted to do 2 public comments. So I put in 2 separate ones. I don't think it'll take too long. The first one has to do with public access to the CCSD office. And I've tried many times to call the CCSD offices during posted office hours and only am able to get an animated answer informing me to leave a message with the answering service. And the office itself is locked from public access. And I think this is unacceptable. This policy discourages public interaction with the CCSD, and it places a burden on the public to persist in getting through to the staff. The CCSD is a public agency and should not be cloistered and unapproachable. I understand that the pandemic originally made such a policy necessary. I understand, too, that about mask requirements and perhaps limited hours to public access, as well as social distancing and monitoring the number of people entering for interaction to protect both the staff and the people coming in. However, some access should be permitted, and one should be able to talk to staff rather than having an answering service during office hours. And for one, I wish to drop off my Prop 218 written protest form directly to staff and have it dated and stamped received, as well as receive a dated copy for my records. I've done this in the past and should be able to do so now. frankly, unfortunately, I don't trust the CCSD enough to mail the form in or leave it in a Dropbox slot outside the office. So please arrange to have posted hours so that Proposition 218 forms can be personally delivered directly to the staff. And that's my one comment. And my second one has to do with the CCSD accountability for rate increases. I think the public is entitled to know how revenue from rate increases beginning in 2014 has actually been spent toward addressing the issues that prompted the rate increase proposals. Simply showing how the money was to be allocated is not enough. What dollar amounts have been actually used for the proposed projects since 2014? I would like to see a clear, concise figures spent on each specific project the rate increases were supposed to remedy. Have the rate increases done what they were proposed to do, or have they been diverted to other purposes? The CCSD needs to provide the public with specific information on its actual spending to address the issues that were proposed. And to be addressed with each rate increase since 2014. The district cannot keep asking for rising rates without providing a clear accounting for how the money from previous rate increases has actually been spent. Also, the proposed inflationary rate increase are ill-defined. Inflation numbers do not necessarily reflect the actual costs the district will be paying for providing services. It may simply be another way for the district to increase revenue without justification. Thank you. That's it.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Archer. Let's see. Oh, Haley, I believe we have some more written comment.
Yeah, I have 2 written comments to read.
Okay, please go ahead.
The first one's from Cheryl McDowell. Hello, board. I had a dialogue with General Manager Weigeld on Nextdoor regarding opening up the district office to receive protest forms and do daily business. The post has been removed by General Manager Weigeld. Numerous folks have complained not receiving their protest info or forms which present a problem. They have been denied 45 days to protest as per Prop 218 rules. The doors to the public must be open. I contacted the following service districts: Mission Hills and Lompoc, open 8 to 4:40, Monday through Friday. Templeton CSD, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Napomo Community, 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. They are open. I'm sure others are as well. Thank you, Cheryl McDowell. The second public comment is from Scott Anderson. Members of the board and senior staff. To put it bluntly, it's difficult to view in a positive light the latest Bartle and James recommendation for water and sewer rate increases. The reason is simple to understand. In 2014, the same negative option vote was used to subsidize the water reclamation facility. 8 years and approximately $15 million later, it remains unpermitted and non-operational. CCSD management failed to track the costs and are unable to provide the total cost, which drove 2 board members to engage in forensic accounting to determine the cost to ratepayers. My conclusion is that the CCSD leadership and staff do not possess the skills to manage expensive long-term capital projects. The lack of confidence in CCSD's management competence is reinforced by a review of the 2018 negative option vote, resulting in the most recent 3-year rate increase. At that time, they stated, the proposed water, SWF, and sewer rate increases are phased in over the next 3 years to provide revenue necessary to fund the normal annual costs of water and sewer operations, as well to provide funding needed for capital improvements to repair and replace aging facilities and comply with regulatory requirements. I'm unaware of any specific accounting of how these additional funds were spent on sewer infrastructure. We are being asked to trust an organization which in both of the above cases failed to achieve their long-term objective, and for which no specific cost can be attributed. We, the ratepayers of Cambria, have paid for these capital projects and have essentially been blocking from seeing specifically how and where the money was spent. The CCSD governing board seems oblivious and unable to or unwilling to publicly address this appalling lack of accountability. Until they do, I cannot support the proposed rate increases and urge others to vote no. We deserve better. Scott Anderson. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Dodson. I'll just summarize a little bit what people are concerned about. I don't know that we have any answers at this time. There is some concern about the fact that we don't have a cap on the inflationary increase that we're proposing. Rather, it's pegged to the California CPI for the previous year. So that might be something we might want to look at. I don't know. There are issues regarding the protest form and related to the fact that the office is still closed. Perhaps the board and management can discuss that at a later time and see what plans there are to reopen. The other thing, the process of counting, I think that's very important that Ms. Dickinson brought up. And I think I'm going to get together with GM Weigel between now, hopefully in the next meeting, and maybe we'll be able to provide you with a little bit of a picture as to how we anticipate that count to happen. In the meantime, those of you who are concerned about the counting process and have suggestions as to how we might proceed, I do invite you to write me at my district email address, which you will find on the website, and I will be glad to take your suggestions and carry them to the general manager, and we will discuss them. I realize this is a very important issue for people, and we need you to feel comfortable that we are being open and above board about this process. There is, of course, an understandable concern as to how previous monies have been spent. And that's a long and difficult thing to explain, and we'll see if we can get into that. But I would remind people, it is not that the staff or the management, that it's not an issue of competence, it's an issue of time. As a matter of fact, all of that information, all the money that's been spent previously can be found in, as a matter of public record, in the various budget proposals that have gone forth and passed by the board over the last year since 2014. And those are all available online. You can all find them there. But on the other hand, we do wish to give you all some answers. This is not, however, a matter of deliberate obfuscation. It's a matter of the fact that we are extremely busy, and it's not something that we wish to use our highly qualified finance manager to go back over old stuff when we have ongoing difficulties that we need to address. So we will address that. But in the meantime, if you're getting a little impatient, it is not because we are purposely obfuscating. And I again remind you that the information is publicly available. Director Steidel. Director Steidel, would you care to join in on that?
Again, if you haven't availed yourself of the articles that have been put out on Cambria CA, you will find that there's very specific information there about the monies spent over the 3-year period of the last rate increase application, showing how much money went towards the CIP items and how much money went toward the M&R, the maintenance and repair, which talks a lot to the different actions that the upgrading or they're bringing up to value the work content that can be accomplished by the wastewater and the water facilities. If you'd like to have a real world example of that, you may have noticed that there was a 10,000 gallon sewer spill in Morro Bay this past week. Also, that they had not yet, in the article, it indicated they had not yet been able to determine where that issue was, and they were going to have to call in a professional to find that for them. One of the purchases of equipment, support equipment that CCSD made during this time period was a camera system and associated software that allows us to put a camera into our sewer systems and to trace the piping of the sewer systems. And had we been faced with the same situation, we would be able to identify for ourselves immediately what the issue was, in the same way that we were able to confirm that the leak, quote unquote, that occurred with the water piping break in the area parallel to Highway 1 recently was specifically water and not sewer, because we were able to check the sewer line to make sure that it wasn't the sewer. And because of that, we could move forward quickly and resolve that whole issue within a week. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stidel. Director Dean.
If I may, President Howell, looking at the proposed water rate charts, and to answer the question about the commercial rates, the charts do show that the proposed water rates are 6% across the board for both residential and commercial for all 3 years, as are the sewer rates, 7%, 7.5% for both commercial and residential for all 3 years. It isn't just residential, it's both for all 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Dean. Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Howell. I appreciate your comments that you made earlier regarding the problem with providing more specific information regarding how previous rate monies have been spent on specific items, and that it's a bit of a challenge to demand of staff time that they bring up, that they provide more specific information in that area. I kind of understand what you're saying, and I don't want to be a spoil sport here, but people out there in the community, are concerned about how these monies are being spent. And I think we somehow, and like I said earlier, I thanked you for what you put on Cambria CA and posting, well, these are some of the improvements that have been made. But perhaps, attaching let's say a monetary value to all these things that have been done, so people have a little bit more confidence in not just how the monies have been spent, but how much of those monies have been spent, could create a little bit more sense of trust in the board and the district. That's just a feeling that I have. And like I say, I realize that would require more effort being made by staff, or perhaps a quickly created ad hoc committee, something like that. I just feel as if this would be the right thing to do. And I believe Mr. Anderson in his public comment addressed that. So I'm just, this is just how I'm feeling right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. And I think I know what Mr. Carmel is going to say. Please go ahead, Mr. Carmel.
Yeah, I was going to say it too.
Thank you, President Howell. This is not an agenda item. This is response to public comment. It's supposed to be narrow and focused. So if we could end this conversation, perhaps agendize the issue, that would be appreciated.
Thank you for that reminder. Yeah, so we will proceed forward. Let me see. Your hand is still up. Oh, okay. So let's see. I believe we are ready for the consent agenda here, and I see there's 4 items on it. Does your agenda all agree with mine? I just want to make sure I've got the right copy here. Everybody has A through D.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think what we'll do first is call for public comment. Well, no. Does anybody need anything pulled from this first? That would be the first step. Okay. Then I will call for public comment on this. So members out there in the audience, this is your chance to comment on the consent agenda. I'll give you just a minute to consider your possibilities. I don't see everybody lining up to speak. No, I do see a director wanting to speak. Nobody from the public. And Ms. Dodson, do we have any written comment on the consent agenda?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Director Stidel, you did have your hand up. You're muted.
Yes, I would like to pull agenda item 5C, please.
5C. Okay, this is the skate park. Okay, all right, we will pull 5C and deal with that after we deal with the rest of the consent agenda. Okay, so does anyone wish to register a no vote on any of the consent items? All right, seeing none. May we have a motion to approve the consent agenda items A, B, and D? Yes, Director Dean. Okay, moved by Director Dean.
Okay.
Director Gray, is that a second?
Second, yes.
Okay, moved by Director Dean, seconded by Director Gray to approve items A, B, and D of the consent agenda. Is there any discussion from the board? Seeing none, I think we're ready for the roll call. Haley?
Okay, Vice President Dean,
Aye.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Stidel,
Aye.
President Howe.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. We are now ready to take up item C, which is consideration to approve an agreement for consultant services with Civil Design Studio for permitting and construction design of the Cambria Skate Park project. So I think on this one, we should probably hear the presentation first, and then Director Stidel, then we'll have your, if you care to speak. So let's see, General Manager Weigel, could you present this item? This is 5C.
Yes, President Howell, agenda item 5C, staff recommends that the Board of Directors approve an agreement for consultant services with Civil Design Studio for permitting and construction design services for the Cambria State Park project. I have District Engineer Ray D'Angelo standing by to offer a little bit more information and comment regarding this item.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weigel. Mr. D'Angelo, do you wish to chime in at this point, or shall we wait till after Director Stidel speaks?
I think GM Weigel summed it up pretty well. I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you. So yes, Director Stidel, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Howe. I just needed to understand this more, not because I'm taking exception to it, and I do support it, but I just needed to understand. In going through the project scope, there's a category that says items and services to be provided to Civil Design Studio, and then also items not included in scope. But the one that I was curious about were the items and services to be provided, assuming that means that that's something that we have the obligation to provide to CDS for their work. And the kinds of things that were listed, I had difficulty understanding whether that was work content that was going to be being performed in-house, or whether we were going to have to be contracting for the services they represented, getting the results, and then providing those to CDS. So just in a generic way, I guess, understanding that would be helpful. And perhaps Mr. D'Angelo can expand on that.
Okay, yes, Mr. D'Angelo, could you please expand?
Thank you, President Howell, and thank you, Director Stidel, for the question and allowing me to clarify. So, case in point, page 32 of your agenda packet, that line down there says items and services to be provided to Civil Design Studio. It says site plans in AutoCAD format, complete topographic map in AutoCAD format, soils report, planning documents, and conditions of approval, if applicable. So. So what that means is in every like engineering civil design effort, typically a base map is provided to the consultant, a survey base map. You know, if someone's building something on a site, you want to give them the site plan that's in real space, and in this particular case, it's an AutoCAD format. In this case, we did provide them this already. This was done in a previous project. If we did need to get some survey done, we would need to do that as an extra part of the scope. That was done in in the preliminary iteration of this project, so we don't need to do that here. It doesn't apply. They already have a base map. As a matter of fact, they already did a preliminary grading plan for this, so it just needs to be finalized with the new curb and gutter improvements that's going to be required by the county. So yes, and in this context too, soils report, for example, that was also done in the previous iteration of the project. So yeah. So anyway, that's all that's talking about. So it doesn't apply in this case, but if we did need to provide a base map, we would need to. That would be an extra service, but in this case, it's already been done.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Danza. That does help, because I wasn't sure that what work had been done previously was actually just going to be a pass through for the additional that needed to happen, or whether it inferred that there was a lot of additional monies that needed to go along with developing the information that had to be taken to CDS. So I appreciate that. So I guess the other thing that I was trying to settle out in my own mind was just a timeline, because some of the things that are being described here would of course be affected by any exceptions we may or may not be able to get from the county when we go through the planning process. So does that become an iterative process if for some reason it has to be readdressed because of the change of the site planning and layout, or other limitations of, additional things that would need, whether or not there would be a bathroom on site, or what the options are, all of those things we've discussed before?
Correct. That would definitely affect the timeline for the submittal of the permit, because I already did have a conversation with county planning on this, and we do need to be sure that we have some of these exemptions buttoned down before we submit the application. I've already requested a meeting with the library director, for example, and that's, that should happen pretty soon here. And I've already had discussions with the building reviewer there at the county too, regarding the issue of the bathroom and parking. So all of that, these conversations are taking place before we officially, sign submit the permit. In which case, at that point, it'll just be it's typically a 60-day process from that point on. But at this point, this is where the hard part is the negotiations.
Right. Okay. All right. President Howell, that satisfied my concerns or questions that I had, and I'm ready to move forward to vote if, as long as there isn't anything else that anyone has.
Well, thank you, Director Steidel. I'm actually glad that you did pull this, because there is a question that I have. This is really to council. Excuse me. It seems to me, Mr. Carmel, it seems that there is a contradiction between the ownership of documents as specified in our contract versus what Mr. Soto has on page 37 of the packet. At the bottom of the page seems to directly contradict what we have on page 41. So can you help me on that?
Sure. Thank you, President Howell. If you look at paragraph 22 of our agreement, I'll read it out loud. Consultants bound by the contents of the proposal submitted by the consultant, Exhibit A, attached hereto and previously incorporated herein. In the event there is a conflict between the terms of consultant's proposal and this agreement, the terms of this agreement shall prevail.
Thank you. That resolves the question. I'm so glad. And normally I would not take public comment at this time because I've already called for it. Excuse me. However, Ms. Dickinson, I do see that you want to have something to say, so I will let you in as long as you're restricting your comment to this item.
Yeah, it is. And thank you, President Howell, but honestly, I don't recall you actually calling for public comment on this item, but just very briefly, when all of this discussion was taking place regarding the skate park, much discussion, many meetings, I did reach out to some other cities and CSDs that already have existing skate parks. So Templeton, for example, has had one for a very long time, and they use a porta potty. And I asked the Parks and Recreation supervisor how that has worked out for them over many years. And I was told that it's worked out just fine. During the day, if anybody wants to use the restrooms in the facility, because the skate park is right behind their CSD building, they are allowed to use it, but she said hardly anybody ever uses the indoor, CSD facility. And she said there hasn't been any problem because most young people don't have to use the bathroom as much as we older folks. So if that situation is permitted through the county for Templeton and other areas, then I don't understand why that wouldn't be possible here. And so I'm sure Mr. D'Anzo is looking into that and as a possibility. Also, the Vets Hall was mentioned too, as CCSD owned property. So that wasn't mentioned today. I only heard the library director being contacted. So I'd like to know about the Vets Hall as well.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Okay, we are now ready to, do we have any other debate from the directors? Seeing none, we're ready for a roll call. Ms. Dodson?
Did you already make a motion?
Oh,
There was no motion.
There is no motion. Sorry. Does someone care to make a motion? Okay, I see Director Dean got her hand up first.
Okay.
And then yeah.
I make a motion that we approve the agreement for consultant services with Civil Design Studio for the permitting and construction design of this Cambria skate park project.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Actually, Director Gray had his hand up even before you, Director.
I had my hand up to second it as well. So whoever.
Well, no,
whoever you choose.
I saw you both rushing forward a second. You can have more than 1 second. So, okay, I think we're now ready for the roll call.
Okay, Vice President Dean,
Aye.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Stidel,
Aye.
President Howell.
Aye. Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Okay, we are now ready. Okay, we are now ready for the hearings and appeals. And this is discussion and consideration. Whoops, sorry about that. There. Try that again. Hearings and appeals. And this is discussion and consideration to fix water and wastewater standby or availability charges as provided in Government Code 61124B and consideration of adoption of Resolution 18-2022, fixing water and wastewater standby or availability charges for fiscal year 2022-2023. So the hearing is now open and I'm ready to take comment. So folks out there, yes, okay, I do see one. So let us begin with the public comment. We'll start with Tina Dickerson, followed by Christine Heinrichs.
Thank you, President Howell. So again, I'm going to ask if there can be more specificity regarding these standby and availability charges as to what they are going to be applied to. This may be a question maybe Mr. Carmel will want to answer. I don't know, President Howell, but can you please be more specific as to where these monies go? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Okay, Ms. Heinrichs.
Yes, thank you. I echo Ms. Dickerson's comments. I recognize the need to spend money on Cambria's aging water and wastewater plants and pipes. The main water pipe burst a few months ago, costing the district somewhere around $400,000 for a temporary fix, to be followed by several $1 million in permanent pipe replacements. This exemplifies my concern that the board spends money on other things, mainly the non-functioning EWS, SWF, WRF, while neglecting the equipment on which Cambrians actually rely. such as drinking water and sewage treatment, which then end up costing way more than they should have. Poor planning, poor decision-making, resulting in wasteful spending. I will oppose any increase in finances for Cambrians until the board demonstrates better financial management. And, you know, things like that SCADA system. I mean, we've been hearing about this for years. If this is not done yet? Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrichs. Oh, yes. Let's see, do we have any additional public comment? Okay, well, we consider that public testimony has now been taken, so I'm going to close the public hearing. And we are now ready to bring the discussion to the board. So board members, do you have anything you wish to say about this? Okay, seeing none, then I will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution. Let's see, let's go Director Gray.
Yeah, I move that we adopt resolution, the board adopt resolution 18-2022, fixing water and wastewater standby or availability charges for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Thank you, Director Gray. Director Dean, Director Farmer, I think we got 2 seconds here. Director Dean first.
I second the motion, but may I suggest that we possibly have district council clarify what these standby charges are, because it seems the public does not understand.
That does seem like it might be a good idea, but before we ask you, Mr. Carmel, let me take Mr. Farmer first. Director Farmer, did you have something you wish to add?
Well, something similar to what Vice President Dean just said, but saying that the members of the public don't seem to understand. I think they just want a little bit more specificity and clarification as to how these monies are being spent.
Thank you, Director.
I don't think it's so much what they don't understand. They just want to they want to understand a little bit more about what is where the monies are going.
Kind of the same thing.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Mr. Carmel, can you weigh in a little bit, maybe offer something to the public on this?
Certainly, President Howell. On January 19th, 2012, the board adopted a policy that states water and wastewater standby or availability revenue is to be spent on maintaining, repairing, and/or improving the respective fund's infrastructure. Specifically, these funds shall be spent on CIP, major maintenance, or capital outlay projects. So I can't give you specificity because I don't think that's been determined yet, but that's what it can be used for.
Thank you, Mr. Carmel. With that, we're any additional discussion from the board? Yes, Director Gray.
Yeah, I'd like to amplify that point a little bit about our spending, how this money is spent. The other, it goes into a broad category of capital improvements and the CIP and so forth, and capital budget. But we do have a budget every year, which, if you care to study it, is very detailed about how we spend that money and on which projects for how much and how much has been spent in previous years. So the information is not being hidden. I hate to make us sound like a broken record here because we were talking about this a little while ago, but the budgets are quite detailed as to how much money is spent on what each year. So, you know, and they're on the web page, readily available. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gray. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I believe we're ready for the question. So please call the roll, Ms. Dodson. Excuse me.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Vice President Dean,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Stidel,
Aye.
President Howell.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes unanimously, 5-0. Moving now to regular business. And as before, we'll move the item D up to the beginning. So let's do that first. This is going to be, pardon me, just a moment here. So this is going to be discussion and consideration of projects to be proposed for community funding via Congressman Carbajal. And so Jim Weigel, could you present this, please?
Yes, thank you, President Howell. This subject, again, discussion consideration of projects to be proposed for the community project funding via Congressman Carbajal. The staff recommends that the board consider directing staff to propose projects for the FY23 community project funding and submit project proposals for consideration through the office of Congressman Salud Carbajal. So as the board recalls, last year was the first year that Congress looked for input for submissions for community projects. We submitted several projects for grants last year. One was selected. We just got confirmation of that, I think last month, as I shared with you. And so we just learned about a week and a half ago that they are reconstituting this effort again this year for fiscal year 23. So we have looked through the scope of the requirements and would like to submit for grants for the projects listed there on the attachment. They're fairly strict requirements. They have to be documented. In many cases, they have to be documented with your regulatory agency. So that makes it a little more difficult. We just can't come up with projects that are on a drawing board that are not have a lot of work behind them and estimates. They have to be pretty robust in planning. So this item is really a request for the board to apply for a grant for these projects. And District Engineer D'Anzo standing by for any questions on these particular projects.
Thank you, Jim Michael. So first, let us do questions or comments from the board just for clarification. Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just,
I see.
sorry,
Yes,
sorry.
I see.
Just a brief question of a general manager.
Just Director Gray, please go ahead.
Thank you. This is an application for all 5 projects as a group. We're not picking which ones and everything like that. These are the. It would be an application. Would it be a single application, or would it be 5 applications for individual projects? How would that work?
Well, as you can see on the attachment, the applications are through different agencies.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't tell you how the Congressman's office down selects our requests.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this has to do with a holistic application of support from community groups, et cetera. But the application is all online and an online application. So Melissa Bland is standing by right now to hit enter for the submission, but I don't know the details. Perhaps District Engineer D'Anzo could answer that question. I think it's all one, but I'll turn it over to him.
Yes. So yeah, just to clarify that, it's under the one blanket of community project funding. But we do have to pick a particular category of, for example, EPA,
mm-hmm.
HUD, these different departments within the federal, within the different federal agencies. Some have differing matches, but depending on the type of project that it is. But so that's in a nutshell what it would be. But yeah, it's under like one blanket, but different agencies are funding it. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Mr. D'Anzo. Yes, Director Seidel.
Thank you, President Howell. I'm making an assumption here, which I think is probably correct, but I just want to ask the question so that it's clear to other folks. In the matrix that you're showing, matching funds available, where you're checking off yes and no boxes, and you look at the associated project cost and the funds requested. I'm assuming the difference between the project cost and funds requested represents what the matching funds would be.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any additional questions or clarification? All right. Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public here. Let's go to the audience and hear what they have to say. And so I see two at the moment. This will be Tina Dickerson, followed by Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Thank you, President Howell. On these 5 different projects or CIPs, is there any way Mr. Dienzo or the general manager can enlighten us as to whether these projects are 80-20 or if they are 50-50? Because if there's some of these are huge projects and we're going to be, 50-50, that's a lot of money. And that's something I think the board and management should be looking at, Mr. Dienzo as well, as to whether these are projects that we could actually afford to pay the other half for. So out of the 5, can you please tell me how many are 80-20, if not all, and otherwise how many are 50-50, and between the 5, what are they?
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. After public comments finished, we'll see if Mr. Dienzo can help us on that. Yes, Elizabeth Bettenhausen, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, President Howell. I'm glad to be here today on this semi-windy day. And I want to suggest that this is a wonderful thing that you're about to do, apply to the federal government for aid. I think that's a marvelous course of action in this representative democracy. And I certainly hope that we are awarded all 5 projects fully funded to the 80-20 or 50-50. I also want to point out and urge you to start today, the 14th of April, 2022, to start paying attention to the fact that if you get one of these grants or all 5, you will already have matching funds for these grants in whole or in part by the increased rates, which I assume now are going to be approved in this sense of democracy in this town. So I want you to keep track from today, from this very, very Thursday, of your expenditures already and income already for revenue for these 5 projects. And if it ends up with 0, 0, 0, 0, that's fine with me. I would just ask you, please, to keep a public record of this particular action that you're taking today and all subsequent actions attendant thereon too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bettenhausen. So yes, Mr. Dienzo, could you perhaps briefly address Ms. Dickerson's question?
Sure. In that matrix that's attached on 7D, the wastewater treatment plant projects under EPA STAG, that's 80-20. The collection systems under the Department of Human and Urban Development, that's 100%. The meter project, which is under USBR Reclamations, that's a 50-50 grant. The Rodeo Grounds pump station under HUD, that's also 100%. And also the San Simeon transmission main, that's also 100%. So it's, yeah, the first one is 80-20, the wastewater treatment plant, the collections is 100, the AMI meters, that's 50%, Rodeo Grounds 100%, and San Simeon 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Dienzo. I think now that we are ready, we're back to the board here for any debate. So board members, do you have anything you wish to say about this motion? Okay. Oh, yes, Director Seidel.
Thank you, President Howell. Yes, I would like to propose that we apply for the community project funding via Congressman Carbajal for projects listed. Since there doesn't seem to be a reference point to use here.
Okay, well, let's use that then. So it's been moved. Oh, is that a second, Director Dean?
Yes, I second the motion, please.
So while I've still got it in my mind, it's been moved and seconded that we apply for the community, Director Seidel, you said it so well. Now
Community project funding via Congressman Carbajal.
Okay, Ms. Dodson, do you have it sufficiently there that, are we good?
I do.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion?
We-
Oh, yes.
Just
Director
for,
Gray.
for technicality, should we specify the 5 projects listed in the in our agenda? So it's quite clear what we're applying for, or is it necessary?
Well, you could add to the motion
Add the
that
motion, yeah, that's-
that
that's the question I got.
represents
Yeah.
the 5 projects in the matrix of the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, so the motion is amended, Ms. Dodson, I'll let you do the hard work.
Yep.
District
So-
engineer has his hand up.
Oh, yeah, Mr. D'Anzo, let's go to you first.
So as Jim Weigel alluded, the caveat to this is that we are focusing on projects that need to be completed or funded in fiscal year 22-23. So meaning that, I'm not sure we should limit ourselves, to, I think like just keeping the categories broad like that, because sometimes we might, for example, the San Simeon water line, we will not be able to complete that project this year ending October 2023, but we are able to do permitting and engineering. That's what we would apply for. We can apply for a maximum of those projects, which would be under that category consistent with the board action, but I'm not sure we should limit it that, just keep it general the way it's stated in the board packet. My suggestion.
So projects to be proposed for community project funding via Congressman Carbajal as presented in the staff report. Would that work? Will that work for you?
Sure, that would work, yeah.
Okay, so to rephrase it then, it's been moved and seconded that the board direct staff to apply for projects for community funding via Congressman Carbajal as listed in the staff report of item 7D of today's agenda. See how that works. Okay. I think it's specific enough that we at least know what we're voting on. Okay, so any further debate? Okay, seeing none, we're ready for the question, Haley. So let us have the roll call.
Okay, Director Steidel.
Aye.
Vice President Dean.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Aye.
Director Gray.
Aye.
President Howell.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And so Jim Weigel, if you would please communicate to staff to go ahead and hit the enter key. And the application will have been submitted.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Moving on then now to regular business item A, which is a discussion and consideration of detached guest houses and district issuance of will serve letters. Just a minute here. Director Dean, I'm actually wondering if maybe we should just have you present this, because this is really something that you, and although the staff has done excellent work here, I'm not sure that it necessarily is germane to the what you had hoped. So perhaps we should reapproach it from your point of view, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think perhaps I didn't explain my motion quite properly when I asked to put this on the agenda. Staff usually in their utilities reports lists all the will serve letters that they're sending out. And they're usually designated that they're remodels or additions or guest houses. All I am asking is that when they present this list, that they explain to the public the guidelines for the guest houses and that these projects are meeting the guidelines for the guest houses, just so that the public is aware that these are not ADUs, that they meet the guidelines for guest houses. And I do know that the county does put something on the permit that says that these guest houses cannot be rented that they're to be used specifically by the occupants of the main residence and their guests, but not to be rented. So I just really wanted this brought forward for transparency. I didn't intend for this to be a change in policy or a massive staff report required, just clarification that when one of these will serves moves forward, that it is explained to the public that this meets the guidelines of no more than 2 bedrooms, no more than 1 bathroom, and no cooking or laundry facilities, and that the main residence will be retrofitted in order to provide the water for that additional bathroom. That's all I was asking.
Thank you, Director Dean. So taking that as the subject matter of the item, as what Director Dean has stated, do we have any, again, just for clarification, then I will go to the public, then we'll come back, see if we can construct a motion and go from there. So, any just comments for clarifying the issue? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public. So friends out there in the audience, I see 2 of you now. So we'll have Ms. Dickinson followed by Elizabeth Bettenhausen. Please go ahead, Ms. Dickinson.
Yeah, thank you, President Howell. I did send an email to the board regarding this item, but I would like to read from the Coastal Commission's item. This is from their February 11th meeting where this was taken up on the agenda. I gave you the agenda item and I sent you the complete 28-page report, but I want to read from page 23 of that report, quote, as described earlier, the LUP includes a series of both broad and specific policies that require new development to be served by adequate public services, as well as more specific policies applicable to Cambria that currently do not permit new residential unit development in recognition of its acute water supply inadequacies. The proposed LCP amendment allows for new ADUs in this community and will lead to additional coastal resource degradation that cannot be found consistent with and adequate to carry out the above policies of the LUP. Thus, suggested modification 3 does not allow ADUs within CCSD's service boundary in Cambria. See Exhibit 3, which is in that, what I sent you. Now, in the discussion on February 11th with Coastal, Dan Carl, the issue of guest houses came up, and he said, we are looking at guest houses the same as ADUs. So you've got a problem here. You can't just sort of just interchange these as far as I'm concerned. It is more water use. That is their concern. That is my concern as I try to conserve as much water as possible. And yet you're willing to allow this to go through. It makes absolutely no sense at all. And I think you're going to have further issues down the road with Coastal. If you, and it's in the, and in the LCP, you've got some real issues here. And I think this thing needs to be tabled and reconsidered with some more research into it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dickinson. So now we will go for Elizabeth Bettenhausen, followed by Christine Heinrich.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President Howell. I sent you earlier, but not quite early enough, I know, an email about this issue. And I appreciate what Vice President Dean has just said, although I think the county is providing not guidelines, but an ordinance regarding this. So I like that clarification. But I said to you that at your meeting on the 17th of March, the utilities people reported on the water use efficiency plan and that they're doing an update. And I urge you not to take action on this or any item related to will serve letters until that update is done and brought to your attention. I say that because you need information on water use in relationship to the retrofit program, and you do not have that now. All you have are general references to evaluations being made, but you don't have any of the data. I think that the CCSD has not provided data on how much water is actually conserved by the retrofit program. The monthly reports do not give this information, and I urge you, please, board, to insist that you get this information. Otherwise, conservation in CCSD is a rather vacuous term. I think that the Coastal Commission made very clear in the reference to the 8 May action of 2019 that they do not monitor individual water meters. How much water, they don't do that. That is not their responsibility. Neither do they have the authority to do that. However, you do. You monitor every single water meter in the billing process, even though that's not now publicly disclosed. I do not understand why it can't be publicly disclosed. If you have somebody using 42 units a month or bi-monthly, to be a bit hyperbolic, perhaps, I think the community deserves to know that, because individual users of water do not own the water. None of us does. The water is public property, basically including Earth, from my perspective, and no one has a right to use as much water as they can afford financially. They simply do not have that right. And I ask you to take responsibility for a more effective and data-based monitoring of actual conservation here in Cambria. The district has the authority to document actual water use, even though I keep bringing up again and again that the only place we can know this as the public is if we go to the billing summary helpfully provided by the finance manager. And if she did not do that bi-monthly when it's available, we would not know the actual water use in Cambria. Now, given the situation on dear planet Earth, this is now a grievous problem, because we don't have infinite water. We do not have infinite water. I repeat it. And if you act as if we did, I assure you that I will keep bringing up this public comment at every meeting, because the climate crisis is about to do us in. That's not my personal opinion. That's the widespread scientific position on planet Earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bettenhaus. Christine Heinrich, please.
Thank you. While the Coastal Commission found the Banbury project created no substantial issue, the commission also specifically prohibited accessory dwelling units in Cambria due to lack of adequate water, even for current users. The difference between a guest house and an ADU is difficult for me to discern. A guest house with a microwave and coffee maker looks like an ADU. It could easily be an Airbnb. How does the board intend to make this determination? How will the staff monitor it? I appreciate that the staff finds public transparency inconvenient. However, Cambria's water resources are already beyond stretched. Last month's biological report documented how dried out and degraded the riparian resources for which Cambria has responsibility are already. I ask the board to avoid getting into the fine points of distinction between guest house and ADU. Cambria doesn't have adequate water, and new uses should not be allowed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrich. Okay, I think we have no further public comment. Haley, do we have any written comment on this particular item?
We do not.
Thank you, Haley. Okay, we're ready now for discussion by the board, and we'll try to come up with some kind of a motion here. So yes, Director Gray.
Yeah, thank you, President Howell. I would like to make a motion in a second or two, but I wanted to comment briefly and to amplify, kind of carry on from Director Dean's comments or about what her intent was in bringing this to the agenda. First of all, I'd like to really salute the staff for a very thorough report and a clear report as to what the distinction is here and that we're dealing with, and that the Coastal Commission staff recognized in their Banbury decision, as it were. An ADU is a separate dwelling unit that can be and is occupied by a separate household, is rented out and so forth. A guest house is by legal definition, by nature, simply an extension of a house and is used by the same household, no new household. So it's the equivalent, even though it's a detached equivalent of a modification of an add-on, say. It's like adding a bedroom and a bathroom or something. Now, the category I think we have to be really clear about is between new dwelling units, i.e. ADUs, and everything else which expands the square footage or the rooms of a house. Now, if we're gonna start treating guest houses like ADUs, we have to treat all modifications like ADUs pretty much. And we're getting into very tricky issues there. And as I think as the report noted, the staff has plenty to do now to deal with the things that come before us. But I also think that the amount of water that's added by rooms or by a bathroom is not significant enough to rise to the level of something we have to take any special action for or go through any extra process for. So I think what I would like to say as a motion, and I think this is what, and of course, Director Dean can tell me if I'm on track with what she's saying. I think we want to have some language attached to the notifications of the will serve letters when there is a guest house or a greenhouse or a garage or some separate building, an outbuilding that gets that will serve letter. We say that this meets the requirements for a guest house and is not an ADU. Requirements for a guest house being that no more than 2 bedrooms, no laundry facilities, no kitchen. Some, I guess you can call it boilerplate language, but something that would accompany the notification, that the list that we have to remind people that this is not the same as a dwelling unit. So I would make a motion to that effect if that, but I want to get input from that first and from the other board members first, especially Director Dean.
Let's start with Director Dean.
Yeah.
Okay. So in a detached guest house, the difference between that and an addition is that it does not have a direct entrance into the main residence, but it is on the same electrical meter and it is on the same water meter. The difference is that it's detached. And there are differences between that and an ADU. An ADU would have its own separate water meter, from my understanding. So it would be billed separately and it's able to be rented, which is not the case of the guest house. And I think, you know, if the district engineer feels that he needs to make a little more clarification on the difference of a guest house and an ADU, I would welcome his input if it pleases President Howell. And also maybe clarification on how they make sure that the existing structure is retrofitted enough to supply the water for the additional bathroom.
Thank you, Director Dean. Yes, Mr. Dienzo, perhaps you could help out here.
Okay, so I think hearing the comments from the board, we are ready to state a little disclaimer or a description in each of the will serves. You know, like this meets the requirements of a guest house. This meets their, you know, we aren't even allowed to do ADUs here. So, you know, we're not, you know, that's not even a question, but yeah, we could easily put that on our staff reports that this meets the requirement of a guest house.
Thank you, Mr. Dienzo. Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Howell. I do want to, I don't know if it's a correction necessarily, but Vice President Dean just stated that ADUs are on a separate, would be on a separate water meter. And in the time that I've lived here in this community and seen a number of what one would call illegal duplexes, where let's say a home was built with 2 or 3 bedrooms. They take a separate one of those bedrooms and convert it into a totally separate unit with a kitchen area, a separate bathroom, and an area, you know, an area for sleeping, and that would still be on the same water meter as the original house. And so I know that exists, you know, throughout this community. So I don't think we can specifically say that an ADU is therefore on a separate water meter. You know, also, I just have a little bit of difficulty with regard to, let's say it's 2 bedrooms and a bathroom and a wet bar and a refrigerator. I don't see where there would be any difficulty in somebody putting in a microwave, something like that, and making it a dwelling unit. maybe, call me skeptical, something like that. I guess that would be my concern, that something like that could take place. Anyway, that's just my feeling. And also, since it's additional 1 or 2 bedrooms, I don't know why, and once again, I could be naive here, why the people that already live there need another 1 or 2 bedrooms and a separate bathroom, unless perhaps they're having people visit there. And now that might not be someone that is renting there, but it does therefore indicate that more water would be used as a result, and who knows for how long. So that's my statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Let me just chime in briefly and then we'll come back. We have to remember the discussion here is specifically regarding detached units. I'd also mentioned that in the state law regarding ADUs, they do distinguish between an ADU which is not within the footprint of the original building, that is to say it's a new building, which would then require a new set of meters, versus something which is within the footprint of the existing building, where a new meter and a new electrical connection are not needed, and which we really have very little control over, as a matter of fact. But those are both referred to as ADUs, so we have to be careful in our conversation. So this discussion is only about detached units. We're not talking. So we're talking about, as I understand, Director Dean, that is your concern, is it not? For detached units? Okay, so we just need to be careful that we restrict it to that. So, Mr. Gray, Director Gray, do you think we can come up with a motion here?
I think if it's clear to everybody that we're talking about how these things are reported in staff reports, I could say that we direct staff to include language in the reports on will serve letters for guest houses, that they meet the standards, the standards for a guest house, and which we could elucidate them. Let's say they just meet the standards for the guest house and are not accessory dwelling units. Okay. Yeah, I just stuck with that.
Let's try that. Director Dean, does that satisfy you?
Yeah. Can I read something out of this staff report briefly?
Please.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
On page 66, it says the commission has generally recognized that existing development using existing water connections in Cambria represents a different development category, and that when such development expands, typically adding a bedroom or a bathroom or a minor expansion, it is not expanding water use in the same way. And this is in their discussion about ADUs. So this is not a new water connection. This is using the existing water connection in the same way that if you had added a bedroom and bathroom to the existing residence. Mm-hmm. So that is my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
If that makes any sense, and then I'll second Director Gray's motion.
Okay. Director Gray, did you?
I just briefly, yeah, that sounds what you're saying is that's not added language that.
No.
Vice President Dean, I mean, we're demoting you. Vice President Dean is adding.
Sorry.
So if she, yeah, it's fine that in that is the accurate reflection of what I was trying to say in my motion. So yes, it's fine.
Yeah, and I don't care if you call me director or vice president. I'm still a director.
Yeah.
So to direct staff to include in the staff reports regarding will serve letters. Regarding will serve letters for detached
well, guest houses and related, guest houses, and I guess it includes things like greenhouses and.
Yeah, so let's say detached units,
detached units that are not dwelling units. That's the key thing.
Well, I was specifically referring to detached guest houses.
Yeah,
we just say detached guest houses.
Yeah,
detached guest houses. Mm-hmm. So instruct staff to include in staff reports regarding will-serve letters for detached guest houses. What would I say? The criteria for determining the appropriate criteria for the,
Yeah.
to justify the determination, something like that. That's kind of awkward, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or that just that it meets the criteria
It meets the
of
criteria, yeah. 'Cause the
definition.
criteria are spelled out here. We don't have to keep spelling them. You don't have to keep spelling them every time.
Okay, that it meets the criteria.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, include in the staff report in staff reports regarding will-serve letters for detached guest houses that, I can't even read my own writing here, that include in the staff, that it meets the that the proposed addition meets the criteria.
For the guest
Meets
house.
the guest house definition criteria. How's that?
Yeah.
Mr. Council looks anxious. Does he have any input on this?
Oh, yes, let's try him. Yes.
I'm not anxious. It's just interesting to watch sausage make.
So that the proposal meets the criteria for detached guest house. Is that work?
And not an ADU.
And it's not an EDU, and it's not an EDU, yeah.
Detached guest house.
EDU rather,
and
it's not an ADU, yeah.
Not an ADU.
Yeah.
Okay, now, let's see, Haley, if my wording matches yours.
I have it already.
Hey, you got it?
I have,
We trust you.
Let's see what we have.
I
Go
have
ahead.
Director Gray move to direct staff to include language on will-serve letters for guest houses stating that they meet the standards for a guest house and are not accessory dwelling units.
Period.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Thank you, Haley. Yeah,
Thank you,
that's-
Haley.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded what Haley said. So any discussion? Now, unfortunately, we do have folks in the public, but we have already discussed this, guys. You guys in the public need to pay a little more
No.
attention. I will take you this time before we vote,
Oh.
but you gotta be, I need you to pay closer attention and come in when I offer public comment. So go ahead and take it now, Crosby and Laura Swartz. Go ahead.
Two quick questions. Okay, if the house has already been retrofitted, how are you going to re-retrofit it to get the extra water? Okay, the other thing is, if you're going to build a guest house that you're kind of considering as attached to meet the criteria, does the main house have to be resprinkled for the fire department requirement? So that's two questions. The third I want to make, thank you, Haley. You're a joy.
I'll second that.
I'll second that too.
Thank you, Ms. Swartz. Any further? Okay, we are ready now. And I think we will just charge forward, but let's bear in mind Ms. Swartz's question, and perhaps it can be answered in another context. So I think, are we ready for the question? I do not see any further discussion from the board. Let's go with the question then. So Haley, please call the roll.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Vice President Dean,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
I'm just going to abstain from this one. Thank you.
Director Seidel,
Aye.
President Howell.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0, 1 abstention. All right, we are ready now for item B. This will be discussion and consideration, this is a long one. Discussion and consideration of approval of an agreement for consultant services with Cambria Associates, LLC for environmental consultation for the Water Reclamation Facility, WRF project, and an amendment to consultant services agreement with Todd Groundwater for additional groundwater modeling for the WRF project, and adoption of resolution 21-2022, amending the fiscal year 2021-22 budget. So first of all, questions for clarification. All right, give it a minute. All right, seeing none. Oh, you do have one. Yes, Director Gray.
I guess this is the time I want to ask this because I think I may have mentioned this to a couple of other people already. This is a matter of the figures, the dollar figures. And maybe since I think our finance director might be here, and I know John, our general manager, is here, I was kind of curious about the capital fund reserves number of $1,012,925. I have two questions about that. One, is that the number before the budget adjustment or after the budget adjustment that we're voting on? And two, how does this square with the cash reserves that were in the adopted budget for the WRF capital fund of like $1.8 million? Because there's something, there's some apples and oranges thing I'm not getting here. And I think other people might be confused by that too.
Okay, thank you, Director Gray. Shall we have, I see Director Jim Weigel, but I'm wondering if maybe Ms. Duffield could answer this. Yes, Ms. Duffield. Or, oh yeah, go ahead, Mr. Weigel.
Yes, I was just, President Howell, Utilities Manager D'Anzo actually has a presentation for this. We'd like to present before we go to clarification.
Okay, but I think this one actually needs to happen before we go to clarification, because it has to do with the meaning. It's not really part of the question. It's more a budget question, which I think is the question directly regarding the WRF reserves.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to have that answered first before we move forward.
Yeah.
So Ms. Duffield, could you answer Mr. Gray's question? Director Gray's question.
Sure. So because we have the draft of the audit, which would provide the ending balance in reserves at the end of 2021 fiscal year, I used that amount and then minused out the budget amounts, which are sitting in this fiscal year's budget. So that is how we got to that number. So the audit's roughly making an estimate of 1.3 million. That will be the beginning number coming into 21-22. And then there's about $288,000 that is currently budgeted. So it's assuming that all those budget dollars for this fiscal year are spent. So that would be the balance before this budget adjustment would go into place.
Thank you, Ms. Duffield. Okay, so Mr. Director Gray, did that kind of answer your question there?
Well, so the estimate that was in the budget for June 30th, 2022 has been corrected, has been basically lessened by about $500,000 because of the audit. Is that basically what happened?
So what happens is when we did the budget, we did not have the estimated fund balances. We only had them through 19-20.
Mm-hmm.
So, we make an estimate of what we think is going to be in there. And then that is solidified through the audit. They make adjustments. We had legal expenditures, if you recall. There's been a lot of things that have happened. So what the auditor has come up with, that is what I memorialized and subtracted out the current year's budget dollars.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Director D, now I see your hand.
So does this balance of the reserves include the settlement funds we received from the CDM Smith lawsuit?
Yes, that is in there.
Thank you. I'm glad you asked that question, Director Dean, Vice President Dean. Okay, I think now we're ready now to move to the more full-on presentation here. So for that, I think I think you have the floor, Mr. D'Anzo.
Okay, thank you, President Howell. Let me share my screen here. Okay, so I have, whoops, I'm hearing an echo. Switch to earphones. Okay, I think we're good. So I have 2 slides, maybe 3 to share with you today regarding this item. In a nutshell, something that I should have stated at the very top of this board item is that this process that we're proposing before you is a requirement to complete our CDP permitting process for the work for the WRF. So I wanted to specify that, make that clear, because it was one of those things that it was the obvious in my mind. You know, all of our efforts up to this point is to get the items nailed down for the permit to move forward. So that's what I'm proposing here today, is a continuation of that process. So regarding this particular item, where we're at, what we presented to you a couple of board meetings ago was the AMP update, which included updated groundwater modeling. And if you recall, that particular effort of the adaptive management plan was to establish a baseline of existing conditions, which we were successful to do. And it also presented a technical basis to that address the items that we need to submit to the resource agencies. That's kind of awkward there, but basically all of the issues that the resource agencies have stated in the past, a lot of the modeling and those things were set to address. And also relating to the AMP, we also identified possible, and I repeat, possible mitigations that requires more modeling, because we do have assumptions in the AMP that would require more modeling moving forward. So where we're at today was what I'm presenting to you is the consulting services for both Kevin Merck and Associates, he's an environmental biologist, and also for Todd Groundwater, which Gus Yates has done our groundwater modeling in the past, and is also proposed to continue to model some of the issues at hand here. So, so these next steps, I just want to briefly outline. These next steps are needed to complete the WRF CDP permitting process. So what you approved with the AMP update in the past, this is now the continuation of that. We are going to submit this to the federal agencies, and we're calling it it's to continue and to complete the resource agency consultation. And we call it the ESA Section 7 process. And if you recall from my last board item, that the Section 7 consultation it's a federal agency process that's designed to ensure that that other agencies, for example, our water reclamation project, will not jeopardize the listed endangered species or destroy or adversely modify its designated critical habitat. So that's why this needs to be brought before these agencies. So this process was begun by Cindy Cleveland. A lot of her efforts have already been, I outlined it at in the staff report that she already did. Some of the parts of the delay of that project was, of her continuing, was the development of a project description. And but once that project description was submitted to the county, and in the form of this new application that was submitted in 2020, there were issues that came up, relating to the AMP, and there were certain technical issues that also came up that was also related to the project that needed to be addressed. And so that's why those studies that we did in the form of breaking out the task 1 and task 2 in-stream flow studies needed to be done. We completed the first portion of that in-stream flow study, in which we used to update the AMP. And we also used that opportunity to update the groundwater modeling. So now, as it turns out, Ms. Cleveland is not able to continue the Section 7 consultation, the agency consultations. So what we're proposing at hand is that Kevin Merck would be that consultant to complete the process. Kevin Merck has done over 20 years of work, specifically here in this area, specifically here in Cambria. And he's also done work with SUNY Cleveland in the past, doing surveys there in the project site in the past. So he is well-versed in developing biological assessments, wetland delineations, and he's done all of these with these consultations with the federal agencies. So the couple of big deliverables that's going to be required for this is the biological assessment. The biological assessment is essentially, it's a report that determines if endangered species will be adversely affected by the project. This is one of those things that it could be required, but in this case, it most likely will be, because we already know that there are endangered species in the project site. So that biological assessment will now be generated, taking all of the data that has been done up to this point with the updated AMP and the updated groundwater modeling. That will be taken into consideration. And it would also take into consideration the assumptions now that that we proposed in the AMP, as far as if mitigation measures are required. So all of that will be generated in this biological assessment that's going to be presented to these agencies. Also, what's going to be required that Mr. Merck will be proposed to do for us is the habitat mitigation and monitoring plan, which is essentially what, if there were any mitigations required, this would be the plan that we would follow to mitigate, to take action to see that those things don't happen, and also to monitor the progress of the effect of the endangered species as a result of our project. And also, one of the other thing that Mr. Merck will be doing is he's going to update the wetland delineation. I know a version of this was done in the past, but it does need to be updated, because the agencies in question have been looking at a 5-year look ahead, or 5-year look back, I should say. So anything older than 5 years, it does need to be updated. So he's going to be doing that also as part of the scope. In addition to the scope, town groundwater under Gus Yates will be doing some additional modeling to defend the assumptions that we made in the AMP. It's one thing to say that, yeah, we addressed all of these issues. We did all this modeling. We will propose these mitigations if something, if these triggers were to happen. For example, we suggest lagoon monitoring triggers. We also suggest groundwater level triggers at the percolation lagoons, or the percolation ponds. So we made those assumptions in the updated AMP, but it needs to be defended, okay? And I know some questions were asked by the public about, I mentioned construction. We talked about construction in the project site in the San Simeon Creek. Well, what we mean by that is the proposed locations of the lagoon discharge, because right now the lagoon discharge is in a location near the San Simeon Creek, but there's a possibility we would also have a lagoon discharge, in a different location that might affect the lagoon levels a lot better than where it is right now. So that's what we mean by construction. We're not building to expand any operations or anything like that. We're just talking about constructing another location for the lagoon discharge. And that would trigger also some permits, but both for federal and for state. So, and Mr. Merck will also be assisting with those permits as well. But in the meantime, additional groundwater modeling in the areas of the discharge, in the areas of the lagoon will need to be done. And that's why to support these assumptions. And that's why there's also that scope for tide groundwater in this board item. So after all of that is done, these things will be submitted to the agency for review. The Section 7 is a federal agency, but so Army Corps of Engineers is would be the lead organization that we would be consulting with, consulting with, and they will coordinate with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and also with National Oceanic Atmospheric and NOAA, the fisheries. So they will also they will be coordinating with those, and CDFW will also be involved with this, and also the regional board because they will also be commenting on the adaptive management plan. So all of these agencies are going to be involved in this process, which Mr. Merck will help coordinate the process through. And assuming that everything is passes muster, if they agree with the assumptions, if they agree with the possible mitigations that we propose, then the hope is to get concurrence with our AMP so that we can submit to the county and complete the information hold for that permitting process to continue, so that the permitting process will continue with the county. And the proposed schedule for completion for this effort is the end of September of this year. So it's the tight line is tight. We are working with the county as far as when we should submit this and what the deadline should be for submitting this information hold. But they are open to our efforts. So, but if we can submit this by September to these agencies and then get review back, it's pretty optimistic we can get this permit completed before the end of the year. So I have just a simple block diagram of what I've already kind of described. We have the adaptive management plan update, which we did, which you approved. And so now we're moving forward now in the agency consultation. So U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, CDFW, Regional Board, NOAA Fisheries. These are going to be the agency consultation process will begin. And with that, additional data will be fed into this process with the groundwater modeling and also with the wetlands delineation update. And then agency review. Once they receive all that information, they will review. And if a formal consultation is done, then they can say, then they can develop a biological opinion. Or if the agencies don't feel that they need, that a biological opinion is not needed, then we can get concurrence for that way. That if they because there's a possibility that they can conclude that we agree with your assumptions, we don't need to, that we can give you a letter without a biological opinion. But a biological opinion is probably the more reasonable or the most likely track that this is going to take. Which is actually really good for us because that'll protect the district with good agency support for the project. So agency concurrence with the AMP, and then after that, we will submit this to the county of SLO, and then the WR permitting review continues. So that means the county will continue their process. They'll develop their findings. They'll approve the permit, which in this case would approve the project, unless it's, of course, appealed to the coastal commission, which there's a good possibility it would be. But I think that's my presentation, and if you all have any questions, I'm available for that right now.
Thank you, Mr. Dienzo. Well, let me start with, let's see, question, now clarification from the board, then we'll go to the public, and then we'll come back for debate. So any questions for clarification or comments for clarification? Yes, Director Dean, Vice President Dean.
So this is the final bit of information you need for the information hold from the county. Everything else has already been submitted to the county, correct?
Correct. We are knocking at the door for completion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Farmer.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments, but I'd like to hear public comment first.
Okay, no problem. Anybody else? Clarification? Anything here? Yeah, actually, he answered most of my questions. So let's go to the public. So folks out there in the audience, this is your shot. We'll start with Crosby and Laura Swartz, followed by Ms. Dickinson.
Good afternoon, President Howell.
Welcome.
We reviewed the agenda package for agenda item 7B, Todd groundwater contract, and we have the following comments. In the discussion for the AMP annual report and groundwater modeling contract, which is agenda page 70, there's a statement that, quote, staff believes that additional modeling and justification of lagoon monitoring triggers such as groundwater levels at the percolation pond and lagoon monitoring wells is necessary to defend assumptions within the AMP, which will likely be challenged by resource agencies. What specific additional modeling scenarios is Todd groundwater being asked to provide? What specific assumptions in the AMP are the resource agencies likely to challenge? Have the resource agencies specified what additional groundwater modeling scenarios they are requesting? In the Todd groundwater memorandum task 2 description on agenda page 82, it states this task allows for up to 6 simulations testing new combinations of WRF operation, stream flow conditions, and irrigation pumping conditions, and details of additional scenarios are to be determined. How will the details of the additional scenarios be determined, and who will make that determination? The Todd groundwater memorandum task 4 description, agenda page 83, concerns a monitoring program during periods of WRF operation, but fails to include monitoring of saltwater concentration at wells 9P4 and 9P7. Saltwater intrusion into the aquifer is the main limitation on the amount of fresh water that can be extracted from the CCSD wells. We recommend that the Todd groundwater contract be revised to clarify these questions. Thank you. Oh, I submitted a written comment that I'd like to have included in the record for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swartz. Okay, Tina Dickinson, followed by Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Thank you, President Howell. This sounds like a never-ending saga. We've been going through this for over 8 years. We've been told, oh, we're going to have everything finished by October, November 2014. Then it gets changed, and then it's 2015. And here we are in 2022. And as I surmised before Mr. Dienzo gave his presentation, that this was all about the application for the CDP. So what it sounds like to me is that the AMP reports from Gus Yates and from Cindy Cleveland didn't measure up to what the CCSD was expecting. And now you want to hire Gus Yates to come up with what you want to have in that report. And you want a new biologist. I'm going to ask you, where is Stillwater Sciences working on the task 1? We're paying them about $105,000. They're doing a lot of what you just had up on your chart, Mr. Dienzo. How much more will we keep paying for this project? I really mean it. I'm sick and tired of hearing about this EWS, SWF, WRF, and costing the ratepayers constantly more and more money for something that does not produce a drop of water. How much longer will you continue to support this? It is absolutely shameful, shameful. And where's the Coastal Commission mentioned, by the way, Mr. D'Enzo? I didn't see the Coastal Commission mentioned. Where's the tech report? Where are the tech committee reports? What's going on? This does not sit well with me as a ratepayer. The Coastal Commission and other agencies told the district 8 years ago, and they are telling you the same things that you're bringing up now to try to get rectified so that you can get this CDP. Yeah, it's a mess, and you know it's a mess, and I get it, but I'm done with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Let's go with Elizabeth Bettenhausen, followed by Christine Hines.
Thank you very much, President Howell. I recall that in 2014, I was 72 years old when all this started on this particular project, and I'll turn 80 this summer. And we are slightly further behind where we were in 2014, I'm sorry to tell you. And I want to express my sympathy to Mr. D'Enzo, because he is not on the staff since all this started and is having to catch up with a plethora of drama, which I'm sure he would rather not have to engage. And I think that he should be exempted from some responsibilities for what's happening. I sent you a memo. I requested on the public record, please. I won't read the whole thing because it's too long, but I want to read some questions because this is a quintessential case of vagueness created by the CCSD for which we later stumble and come to terms. Well, question number 1. Has all necessary discussion and coordination been completed with Hearst St. Simeon State Park? Question number 2, has all necessary discussion and consideration been completed with California Coastal Commission? Neither is listed in this report. There is reference to the attached proposal in describing what has to be done with federal agencies and others. There is no proposal attached. This statement concludes the staff discussion about hiring Mr. Merck. Given the amount of work involved and Mr. Merck's experience with Cambria and blah, blah, what experience with Cambria does Mr. Merck have? You might all be, I'm certainly you're all familiar with it. I'm not. Maybe you should inform the public about some of these things too. What work is involved with the regulatory agencies specifically and explicitly? And I'm sorry, the report that was just given does not answer that question very well. This leads to my next point, because no staff analysis is given to the board about Mr. Merck's letter of the 30th of March, 2022. Does the staff believe everything that Mr. Merck describes is required for the CDP application? Should the public know that? I think that would be a good idea. I've received no reply to my email that I sent to you earlier about the meaning of the word construction. And now Mr. D'Enzo has reported today that he meant by the word construction, but it's not in the staff report, that word at all. It's only in the letter from Mr. Merck. And so maybe, and the definition that Mr. D'Enzo has told us does not fit with all the instances of what Mr. Merck is describing as construction. And finally, I want to say that with regard to what's described about Mr. Yates, there's certainly more specificity about that. I appreciate that. But I would like to know the timeline for task 4. That's explicitly stated, task 4 is explicitly described, and it bears on what Mr. Schwartz was asking too. The work that's been needed for the past 8 years to determine, in cooperation with biological analyses, the environmental effects of operating the EWS, SWF, WR. We've needed this work for 8 years, and now it's task 4, and I'm to believe that task 4 is going to be done by the end of September of this year? No, no, no. So credulous I am not, even as I approach my 80th year. And I ask you, where in this item is a description of the purpose of hiring consultants needed for specific services and agreements and amendments? Where is this explicitly, clearly, and adequately stated? Your resolution before you today doesn't address any of this. It addresses money and where you're going to get out of the budget. But once again, you're hiring people with insufficient stipulation about what you are hiring them to do. And I assure you, this has happened before, and it is exhausting for me as I approach my 80th year to continue to deal with it as a public representative. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bettenhausen. We now have Christine Heinrichs.
Thank you. And I thank all those who went before me, including Mr. Swartz, for asking for those specifics of what questions do you need answered and how is this going to happen? I read this contract with great interest. The board received biological and hydrological reports, which were started back in 2016 at the March 17th meeting. We all received these with great relief. This was going to answer the questions that would fulfill the requirements of the county's information hold, and the CDP application would finally be able to proceed. Well, now it turns out that that wasn't there. Those reports did not satisfy. We have to hire another biological consultant. We have to ask Mr. Yates for more tests, another $125,000 to this still non-functioning. And I frankly, along with Dr. Bettenhausen, I am dubious that we will arrive in September and get these reports and then decide that this is the answer. How over 8 years did no one notice that there were 2 federal permits required? These are significant requirements. How did this suddenly appear on the landscape? The stream bed alteration requirement for the state. Where did that come from? How come we didn't know about that? Mr. D'Anzo presents this as if they're minor changes, but it sounds very major to me. More construction out there, going to need the CCSD to provide construction plans, a new project description. This sounds like we have to go back to more public hearings on this project if we're going to have a new project description. Do you not know what's built out there? What is built? What are you going to build? I mean, this is very frustrating to see this kind of level at this point when the county was so specific in what was needed to complete this application 2 years ago. This is another point in my opposition to rate increases of any kind. When the board spends that kind of money, $125,000 on the water and wastewater infrastructure that is in need of maintenance, I'll be willing to listen to a rate increase proposal. I ask the board to address these questions before considering this contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrichs. All right, we're ready to come back to the board for discussion. So let me see, do we have anybody wish to start here? Anybody want to, okay, Director Farmer.
Well, I think one can see, thank you, President Howell. I think one can see why I stated I'll wait for public comment before I make a comment, because there's people much brighter than myself out there that were wise enough not to run for office. That's just a joke. However, we've heard all of these observations, concerns, complaints, serious concerns about, how do we continue on this process of this money pit, of issues not being addressed, of new concerns coming up that are just ongoing, this process here with the millions of dollars that we've spent on this project over an 8-year period. I'm not even going to get into that amount of money, but I do want to mention that with regard to money, we paid, since I did take the time to add it up, we paid Ms. Cleveland $184,000 for all of the work that she did over the past 5 years and 1 month. And as a result, we need another consultant. And it just does seem rather frustrating that 8 years, roughly 8 years after this project was built, that I'm not going to say we're back to square one. Who knows where we are? And who knows what else is going to come up in the future that we don't even know about now. like I say, the people that spoke before me from the public were much more knowledgeable and eloquent than I'm going to be right now. I just want to reinforce their concerns and their comments. And I'd like to think if other people in the community had the time and inclination to make as much effort as the usual folks that attend this meeting, they'd be equally concerned and frustrated as the folks that continue to speak at our board meetings. And I don't know how I express my frustration along with them, other than to say that, you know, how much longer is this process going to take? How many people are we going to be hiring? How many, like we said, how many new concerns are going to come up that are just going to keep this process, keep this project going, and keep this permitting, the permitting when Mr. Merck says here that initiating the permitting process, we will coordinate with the Regional Water Quality Control Board to track progress of the permit approval. Well, initiating a permitting process that happened 2 years ago, this is something new. He's already assuming this permit's going to be approved. Well, I've said enough. I don't want to take any more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farley. Director Gray.
Thank you, President Howell. I share the frustration a lot of people share about the seemingly endless process of getting everything, you know, checked off and getting all the agencies on board. And I do have, I'm a little uncomfortable with, I don't know if I say it's vagueness, but there's a sense that I get in reading these materials that we don't yet have real clarity as to exactly what all these agencies want to see. And maybe we don't have that clarity because it's impossible to get. But I guess my question is, how are we going to move this process going forward with the new consultant and more of Gus Yates's work in consultation with all these agencies, the federal agencies, the state agencies, and the Coastal Commission? What kind of feedback mechanism do we have in place to know we're on the right track and we're actually getting to addressing their concerns, rather than just doing everything we can possibly do and hoping it's enough? Because I think we've done a lot of that over the years. We've done a lot of studies, we've done a lot of work, we've been through a lot of hoops, and we always seem to have a new hoop after that's over. How are we organizing this work, I should say, and the contract and our supervision of it, so that we know we have reasonable assurance this is the last hoop? So maybe Mr. Dienzo can answer that, maybe Mr. Weigold.
Let's hold off on that for a minute.
Okay.
It is definitely a concern. We're all wondering how many more hoops there are. Anybody else have any additional commentary? And I wish to comment as well, and then I'll bring in Mr. Dienzo again. Anybody else? I just want to make sure everybody has had a chance to talk. Okay, let me just briefly express my opinion. I was somewhat distressed in reading the Merck the letter for a couple of reasons. Well, let me go back. I'm going to move that we table this until such time as the Resources and Infrastructure Committee has had a chance to review it. My concern is largely this: in the letter from Mr. Merck, it sounds as though he is speaking as though the project has not even broke ground. First of all, he uses a term which we no longer use to refer to the facility consistently throughout, even though the letter is dated March 30th of this year. Furthermore, the references to construction, I mean, unless I can understand Mr. Dienzo's, but it should have been. I have a feeling that Mr. Merck simply cranked this out or has had it sitting on his desk. What's not clear to me at all is that he's simply taking up where Cindy Cleveland left off. It sounds like he's starting from scratch. So, and I want to be fair, but I will not vote to approve this contract as written. Not if for no other reason than I really do not want to have that name continuing down through the ages. It needs to be referred to by what we now officially call it. And I would also like to see this contract updated so that it doesn't look like he's starting from scratch. Now, it may be that if had this come before the R&I committee first, and had the public been given the opportunity to ask questions and have the answers that we as a board could have seen, then we might have not be in this position today. So I'm going to move to table this, and I'm quite willing to call a special meeting of the board once the R&I committee has reviewed this, to then take this matter up. And I would be also supportive of the R&I committee offering a special meeting as well. But I really think, for a couple of reasons, we need to get this in front of the public in a way that they can understand it, or more importantly, we need to get it in front of the board so we can understand it. And I think we need to have that, and that is the opportunity, is to get the R&I committee in there, answer their questions. And it may well be that once those questions are answered, you will have answered ours as well.
Yeah.
So I move that we table this until such time as the R&I committee has had a chance to review it.
I second.
Seconded by Director Gray. And now I see a lot of discussion going on here. Where should we begin? I think Mr. Director Farmer had his hand first, and then Vice President Dean, and then Director Stidel.
Yeah, I'll just make this as quick as I possibly can and not be redundant like I was before. I think my main concern right now that I didn't state before is that when push at the end of all of this, this is about a project that was put in an environmentally sensitive habitat area. And Mother Nature continues to suffer from our folly. And the fact that we just continue to move forward with this particular situation that, drains financial resources while continuing to also impact the natural resource that is most important to us in this community, which is water. I guess, I don't know. I'm just trying to express some empathy for Mother Nature. And that's well, this is not one of my better days, but you get my point. With regard to the importance of valuing Mother Earth while we're going through all of these permitting processes and spending more money. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. This will be Vice President Dean, followed by Director Stidel.
Are you moving to table this entire agenda item, including the portion relating to Gus Yates? Because it sounds to me that the part that you have concerns about is the part with Kevin Merck. The other thing I want to say is it is a requirement of our financing of the loan, and it is a requirement of our emergency permit that we move forward and get a permanent coastal development permit. And to address the concerns that Director Farmer raised, it is our responsibility to make sure that we do all the investigation that we can of the environment and the habitat that would be affected by this facility before we finalize this permit. We are all concerned about the environment. We are all concerned about the endangered species and their habitat. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that we are not going to do further damage to those particular things while we are pursuing this permit. And I believe that's what these studies are for.
Thank you, Vice President Dean. Let me just briefly respond. I would be open. In fact, I did mean to do that. I'm happy to approve the Yates contract today. It's the Merck contract that I'm having a problem with.
Yeah.
Let's see now, Director Stidel and then Director Gray.
Well, actually, I think there are two things that we need to do. And one of them has to do with the the budget adjustment of $27,000. Because the environmental monitoring compliance costs to date have exceeded the budgeted amount by 27,000. So if you want to take action today, exclusive of the contracting question with Mr. Merck, then I think there are two things that need to happen. One is if you want to approve the Gus Yates portion, and then to approve the budget that is the exceeded budgeted amount of 27,000. And then the portion related to amendment to the an additional 39,314 for the continued work for Gus Yates.
Okay, Director Gray.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I wanted to, I didn't want to get in the way of what Dr. Steidel was talking about because that was important too, but I wanted to, I had my hand up because I agreed with the idea of separating out the Merck contract, which is where I think the ambiguity and the vagueness and the problem is about what exactly is going to get done and who's going to be consulted. Yeah. I'm perfectly fine with going ahead with the additional work by Gus Yates. And because I think that does need to be done, needs to be completed. So I don't know if if I want to suggest an amendment to the motion, that the motion to table the item apply only to the issuance of the contract to Mr. Merck, to Kevin Merck, along with the budget adjustment required for that.
Okay.
Then we can take up the other one.
Yeah, yeah, that works for me.
Yeah.
So let's see, let me restate that, or let's see, Vice President Dean, did you want to add or expand that before we state the motion?
Can we find out from our district engineer, D'Anzo, if we table this item and bring it to R&I and Finance in special meetings and then bring it back to the board, how much of a problem is that going to be for his timeline?
Yeah, we can ask him that. Yes, Mr. D'Anzo, would you be so good as to respond?
Well, it would add another month to the timeline at least. So.
Okay. So it could add another month to the timeline. Yeah, go ahead, Director Dean.
So by delaying this by a month, would you still be able to complete the process needed to move the permit forward by the end of the year?
Well, I'd like to think so. I mean, it's going to be cutting it close. So, but there's still a possibility.
Okay, thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. D'Anzo. Yeah, and let me just tail on that. Again, to speed things along, as soon as Mr. D'Anzo, assuming that we do this, as soon as you are able to present it to the R&I committee, then perhaps Vice President Dean can schedule a special meeting. And then, as I said before, I'm quite willing to schedule a special board meeting so that maybe we can get this done in under a month, maybe 2 weeks is what I'd be looking for. So but at any rate, it could take as long as a month. Let's put it that way. Is that legitimate for me to say? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody shaking their heads. So the motion is amended to table consideration of the Merck Associates contract until it has, and its associated budget adjustment, until it has been brought forward to the, now I just said the R&I committee, but if you want the finance committee as well, then I would say yes, let's do them both. So until it's been brought forward to the R&I committee and the finance committee. So that would be the motion. And then we'll deal with the Yates one as a separate question altogether. Yes, Director Steidel.
If you want to start moving it through both committees, I think you're just compounding the impact for Mr. D'Anzo. I don't know that, you know, a contract amount is something that the finance committee needs to look at. It's more in context of what R&I
Mhm.
looks at. So I don't view it as an absolute necessity. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
You may choose to direct that, but yeah.
No, that's fine. So let's, if it's agreeable, let's change the motion to be just the R&I committee, not the finance committee. Is that all right, Director, Vice President Dean?
Yes, and I'll poll my committee members and see how quickly I can get a meeting scheduled.
Good, thank you. Of course, we haven't voted yet, so we don't know. I see Mr. Gray, but I also see Mr. Dienzo. Let me start with Mr. Gray first, and then.
Oh, I just want to say I concur in the amendment. So as a second.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so we're clean now at what we think we discussed it now, folks. So Mr. Dienzo, you first, and then Director Steidel.
Oh, me first? Okay. So I guess I'm a little bit unclear about what the R&I committee is. More clarity on Kevin Merck's scope. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So no policy considerations or anything like that. Just
no. Yeah. The issue is just to get understanding, and also, but please have him correct the get the name correct at least.
Well, yeah.
Because I will not vote for it as long as it refers to the sustainable water facility. Yes, Director Steidel.
It sounds to me that we have multiple motions that we would need to do in this. I mean, one of them is setting aside the issue related to the contract for, why am I having trouble with Merck? I could want you to say Kirk for Merck, and the budgetary association. But there's a second amendment that has to do with approving the Todd groundwater with the increase, with the associated budget increase of 39,314.
Yes.
And potentially even a third motion that addresses having to make the budget adjustment, or excuse me, having to adjust the environmental monitoring and compliance cost to date in excess of the budget by the amount of $27,000.
All right. Let's see. What we don't need to, what we can do then, may I suggest we go ahead with the tabling motion.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we do is we'll simply modify the wording on the resolution to refer only to the relevant, let's see, what do we got here? The resolution is a budget adjustment. So that can be modified to reflect the part that's relative to related to the Yates contract. But that's the only resolution I'm seeing here.
So I guess I'll call for the question on the first motion. Which is,
okay, let's see if we can
I think we can
that.
get that one cleared.
Yeah. So let's see if we can manage this. So Haley, let's see can you help us on this? Let's see where we are.
Yeah, do you want me to read it back to you?
Please.
Okay, so I'm gonna start from the beginning. President Howell moved to table this item until the Resources and Infrastructure Committee has time to review it. Director Gray seconded the motion, but suggested an amendment to table the issuance of the contract to Kevin Merck Associates LLC, along with the budget adjustment required for that. President Howell agreed to the suggested amendment and suggested to include that it's sent to the R&I committee, and Director Gray accepted the amended motion.
So the amended motion would be what Director Gray said, plus the reference to the R&I committee. So if you could start back at that point, and that will be our motion. So could you read it once more, just starting from not where I moved, but what Director Gray, how he amended the motion.
It would be Director Gray, motion to amend, move to table this item. Well, it's different motions, so I'm gonna have to put them together. Hold on one sec. It would be Director Gray move to table the issuance of the contract to Kevin Merck Associates, along with the budget adjustment required for that, and send it to the R&I committee for review.
Good, perfect, we got it. Okay, now while we still remember it,
Yeah.
Any further debate? Okay, the question was called for. So we're ready for a vote on this. So the roll call, please, Haley.
President Howell,
Aye.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Stidel,
Aye.
Vice President Dean.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Now we go to the other part. So this will be to the two things. We need to, let's see, we're going to, yeah.
President
Go ahead,
Howell,
go ahead.
I
please.
think that the second motion, which does not have to do with the resolution, because the resolution is the monetary piece of it. But the
Right.
second resolution may be to continue the consulting services with Todd Groundwater, and to increase his contract amount by $39,314. And by doing that, then we can move that forward, and a final motion would have to do with the resolution, with the dollar value associated with it.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent.
I second that. I second that.
Second, excellent, thank you both. So the motion is to
To approve the extension, the amendment to agreement for Todd Groundwater Consulting Services in the amount of $39,314.
excellent, and the associated budget adjustment.
Well, no, we'll leave that alone because that's going to be the resolution.
That's another motion. That's another motion.
Right, we got it. Okay, I think we got it before I mess it up again. So so is there any further debate on this one? Okay, oh, yes, Director Farmer.
Not necessarily debate, but excuse me. Thank you to President Howell. Not necessarily debate, but I'm just thinking back to about a half an hour ago when Crosby Sports, made his statements with regard to his concerns about Todd Groundwater and needing some more specifics, more questions that needed to be answered before he felt comfortable with the contract. So I'm probably going to vote no on this because of what Crosby stated. Thank you.
Okay. So let's see. Did we get? Was that the whole?
So
I'm
now
sorry,
we
you
vote.
lost me. Now we vote. Okay. Okay, we're ready to vote, Haley. So let's do the roll.
Okay. Director Stidel,
Aye.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
No.
Vice President Dean,
Aye.
President Howell.
Aye. So the vote is 4-1. Director Farmer in dissent. Okay, now Director Farmer, I see your hand. No.
No, I just want to make an observation that after pretty much 8 years of this fiasco, known as the Emergency Water Supply Project, the finances, the confusion, everything that you could possibly throw on the Velcro wall that sticks up there that indicates all the problems that have been created. It's almost like this discussion in some fashion is a metaphor for this facility.
Okay.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Yes, Director Gray.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion, third motion. And I want to check my math here, first of all, maybe with Ms. Duffield. I'm simply taking the overall 152,174 budget adjustment, subtracting the 85,860 that would go to Kevin Merck rather, and the result of that is $66,314.
That's
Does
correct.
that look good? Okay,
Yes.
so I will move that we adopt, the board adopts resolution 21-2022, amending the fiscal year 2021-22 budget in the amount of $66,314 using WRF fund reserves.
Like a plan. Is there a second? Second by Director Stidel. So it's been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution 21-2022 to amend the, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but to amend the budget, to adjust the budget to
Would you like me to read the
amend the
motion?
budget. Yeah, amend the budget as shown in Exhibit A. Well, we have to change it. Yeah, we have to change the wording. Yeah, please, Haley, would you mind?
Director
Sorry,
Gray
is it-
moved to adopt the resolution 21-2022, amending the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget in the amount of $66,314 using WRF fund reserves.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, Director Seidel.
Let me ask for clarity's sake, because we understand what that number represents right now, but if you would have to go back and try to reconstruct what it meant a year from now, it would be very difficult to be able to associate that with what this agenda was. So that it might be worth adding on that the $66,314 is an amendment to the Todd groundwater contract in the amount of $39,314, and for the environmental monitoring and compliance costs in excess of current budget of $27,000. It's just having the segregation of that to understand that some of it had to do with the budget overrun and some of it had to do with the contract extension, I think is important.
Okay. Director Gray, or I see you're okay.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be a good I guess basically additional wording at the end in the amount of 155 amount of 60. What is it?
66,314 comprised of
comma, which amount?
Comprises
the items that Director Stidel, the 39, what was it? The additional
39,314 for extension of the groundwater.
Yeah, exactly.
And
$27,000 in a budget overrun.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Duffield had something to contribute here.
But generally, if you look back behind the resolution, we attach an Exhibit A, which usually shows a little quick recap of, what we're funding and how it's being funded. So I can leave that original amount intact. I'll have to clear this with District Council to make sure it's okay to do this kind of an attachment. And then I can put under it that per board approval, this is the revised adjustment. And I can list out, one is the budget overrun for 27,000 and one is the specific Section 7 ESA contract for whatever for Todd groundwater.
Okay,
just so that it's clarified, different from what was published.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay? I say, so we don't really need all the wording in the motion.
That works.
Okay.
That works for me, as long as there's
So
something that provides the clarification.
So my original motion would still be in effect. Okay.
I think so. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Duffield.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Any discussion? All right. Okay, Haley, let's restate the motion now one more time and then please call the roll.
Okay, so I have Director Gray move to adopt Resolution 21-2022, amending the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget in the amount of $66,314 using WRF fund reserves. Director Stidel suggested an amendment to include $66,314 as an amendment to Todd groundwater in the amount of $39,314 and environmental costs in the amount of $27,000.
Yeah, we don't.
Haley, what we did is that after you said the 66,314, the rest of it goes away. We're going back to the original amendment.
And ended at WRF reserves.
Okay, so the original motion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The original motion, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think
Finance manager saved us on that one.
Okay, so the original motion is just to adopt the resolution amending the fiscal year budget in the amount of 66,314 using WRF fund reserves.
Yes,
Correct.
definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we got it. All right, so I think we're ready for the question then. So Ms. Haley, please call the roll.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Director Stidel,
Aye.
Dr. Farmer,
No,
Vice President Dean,
Aye.
President Howell.
Aye. Motion passes 4-1. Director Farmer in dissent. All right. Yes, Director Dean. And
Okay,
Director- Go ahead.
I have two things, please. I would appreciate a 3-minute break, and we also need to extend the meeting, either that or move the next agenda item on the committee bylaws or board and committee bylaws to another meeting, because I suspect it's going to take quite a bit of time.
Yeah. I would be amenable to, well, let's do this real quick. If the board is agreeable to postponing the 7C item until our next meeting, I think we've got room on that agenda for it. I'll ask for a unanimous consent. Do I have unanimous consent to move item 7C to our next meeting? Anybody object? Please indicate. Okay, we have unanimous consent. No director objects. So 7C will reappear on next week's menu, on next week's agenda.
Do we still need to extend the meeting to accommodate closed session?
I think we will. Our limit is we're supposed to finish at
It's supposed
4
to
or
be
at 5.
4. Our regular meeting is supposed to finish at 4.
Yeah,
4.
so it's 3
We have
hours.
10 minutes more than the regular meeting, yeah.
Yeah, so we do have to extend. Yeah, is that true? Yeah, I don't remember what we said. Our meetings were supposed to go 3 hours, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Yes, we will need to extend. I'll let you guys decide how long you want to extend for. Yes, Director Dean.
If district council thinks it's enough time, I move that we extend the meeting till 5:30.
Okay, he's nodding his head. All right, I'll second.
5:30?
5:30?
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
an hour and a half?
I'm sorry. I meant 4:30.
Oh, okay.
I'm
That's what
sorry.
I thought, yeah.
I
4:30.
amend my motion to 4:30. Thank you.
Okay, and I second the 4:30. So it's been moved and seconded to to extend the meeting till 4:30. Again, I'll take unanimous consent on this. So if anyone objects, please speak now or forever hold your peace. And I see no objection. So it passes, the motion passes unanimously. So let's see, what time have we got here? Do you want to come back at 3? Do you want to hold 5 minutes?
Do we need to take,
Give me a time. Yeah, how about 3:55? How about 4 o'clock? You want to start again at 4? That's 8 minutes.
No, because
That's kind of
I don't
close.
think we need 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. So for some reason, my brain is suddenly going on holiday here. I'm sorry. Yeah, Harry.
yeah, thank you, Don. Can I suggest maybe calling for future agenda items and then public comment on closed session, and then we take a break and come back and go to closed session?
Okay, brilliant idea. Let's do that. I like that idea. So we're just charging right along here then. So we're going to do, that means we'll probably, we did the project funding. Do we need to discuss the reports? Let me just real quickly, if everybody's happy with their written reports, don't wish to make any additional.
Yeah.
Cool. I will call for public comment briefly on that, but let's just charge into this. Let's do, yeah, very briefly. People out there in the world, do you want to comment on the community, on the written reports? Okay, Christine Heinrichs. And followed by Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to comment on the policy committee report on pages 111 and 112. The policy committee is working on ethics, climate change, and emergency preparedness policies. The LA Times culture writer I've referred to earlier said nothing matters as much as our boneheaded mass suicidal march toward extreme weather oblivion. In the article from the New York Times about the IPCC, they wrote, the decisions we make now may have an outsized impact on humanity's long-term future. Climate change threatens to jeopardize communities, public health, and the environment. The next steps are clearer and more affordable than they have ever been. Rather than getting distracted by distant and likely irreducible uncertainties, let's focus on what matters now, deploying clean technologies we know we need, implementing a coherent climate policy, laying the groundwork for future progress, and creating a just transition that shares the benefits of a sustainable energy system. Cambria could be a leader in energy transition policies and actions. Add an ethics policy, which the district currently does not have, and emergency preparedness, especially for fire. Since CAL FIRE failed to put out the fire set to burn a pile of vegetation and it reignited late at night, Cambria's awareness should be on high alert. No report yet from Fire Chief Hollingsworth as to stopping these deliberately set fires during the driest spring recorded. But I think that the board should be concerned about these policies. They should be enacted, especially, I mean, I can't imagine opposition to ethics or emergency preparedness, and climate change should absolutely be at the top of our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrichs. And now, yes, Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Thank you very much, President Howell. I really regret that you didn't take a 3-minute break, because my 78-year-old body, well, oh no, 79-year-old body needed it. And I want to assert something. I used to teach courses on embodiment at a graduate school level. And I defy any one of you to tell me that you, truthfully, that you would not personally benefit from at least a 3-minute break at this point, even simply to stand up. And I charge you, friends, with taking more responsibility for embodiment, because it's directly correlated with what Ms. Heinrichs just said about the climate crisis. If we took our bodies more seriously with better information about how they work, we would be much more likely to give due attention to that climate crisis. And I will not send you the photograph of the piece of flesh that I found on the beach, but fortunately, a friend of mine also found a day later 4 vertebrae, probably from a dead dolphin. And I urge you to think about this possibility, and I'm serious. Sit there and think right now, if you know what the inside of your body looks like. What does the inside of your body look like? And how does that affect how you understand how it works, your knowledge of it? And how does it affect the judgments you make in these meetings? And I will spare you the sending of all sorts of articles I've written about this. So rejoice and be exceeding glad and go take a break.
Thank you, Dr. Bettenhausen. Okay, let's see. I see some hands up here. Yes, Vice President Dean and then Director Gray.
Okay, I just wanted to add to my NCAC report that they are taking applications for representatives and alternates, for the even numbered districts, and the map for that is on the website. The applications have to be in by April 19th, and the next NCAC meeting will be the 20th, and elections will be June 21st. So my position on the NCAC is open if anybody wants to apply for that too, and that would be Lodge Hill. Thank you. And in response to Elizabeth, my insides are about to float away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. After Director Gray, real quick, and then we'll take a break.
My hand was up for future agenda items.
Cool. What let's do is let's take the break now and then come back for future agenda items. Might be. I think we should take Dr. Bettenhausen's advice here.
Okay.
So how about 4 o'clock? How does that sound?
Fine.
Okay.
Fine.
4 o'clock, everybody.
I apologize for the 5:30 thing. I'm so used to the meetings ending at 5 o'clock. Sorry.
You scared us a little bit, that's all.
No, I just haven't adjusted to the time difference. I'm sorry. I only meant to extend it a half hour.
Sorry, guys, unfortunately, there's one thing about working in the office. It's tempting to start a conversation with the folks down here, so I apologize keeping you all waiting. Okay, we are ready now for future agenda items, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, I had.
Okay, so let us do that. And let's go to the public first. And well, no, let me hear you guys, and then I'll go to the public, see if they have anything to add.
Okay.
Okay, so Director Farmer and then Director Gray.
Well, I believe Director Gray had something first, but I'll go ahead since you called on me. Yeah, I think we ought to address the idea of having the front door open at the district office. We probably need some clarification as to why the district office continues to be locked, and not just for, don't just have it open for dropping off the 218 protest forms, but just have it open for people that need to come in, pay a bill, ask a question, or whatever. I think that we've had enough folks comment on the fact that the door being locked is an inconvenience to the members of this community. And since they paid the bill, I'd like to hear the reason they pay our bills. I'd like to hear the reason why the front door continues to be locked. And so I'd like that to be a future agenda item. I guess I need to reword it, don't I?
That's okay. I got it. I think we can handle that. So, yeah, Director Gray.
Yeah, well, what I have is actually related to that. I also wanted to have some future agenda items on when we reopen the office. I was originally, though, my main idea was to try to take on this issue of how and when to resume meetings, in-person meetings. And I thought it might be simpler for us since we've had this on our agenda a couple of times, and we sort of, postponed it because we're trying to do two things at once. We're trying to figure out, well, how are we going to go back? And what are we going to do? Are we going to do hybrid meetings? Are we going to do Zoom, Zoom and in person, or just in person, or the old style in person with the AGP televising or whatever? And then we're trying to decide at the same time, do we go back? So I think I'd like to see it bifurcated. Maybe now up front, before we decide anything, we decide, and I think staff has asked for this a couple of times too, my impression. We decide, well, what are we, when we do go back, under what format are we going to go back? With committee meetings and board meetings, and decide that, just get that settled as to whether we're going to go back to the old way at committee meetings, which I think actually, with the audio recording and so forth, or if we're going to go back to the old way at the board meetings, or we're going to do something more of a Zoom in-person hybrid. Get that settled. And then with the opening, with going back to in-person meetings, I think we go back to in-person meetings. And at the same time, I think we reopen, go back to regular public hours, in-person hours at the same time. We have to decide when we do that and what will be the conditions that have to be met to do that. So I'd like to do that kind of in two separate phases. The first phase being the format of the meetings when we go back. So we can get that in place. And then when we pull the trigger, as it were, to resume, we have it all planned out.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Let's see, anybody else? Yes, Director Dean.
Does the issue of why the office doors are not open need to be an agenda item, or can we ask the general manager, now to address that question? Or can we not because it's not an agenda item?
Let's see. Director, Council, maybe you could weigh in there. Yeah,
If
go ahead.
the
Mr.
general manager wants to give a short explanation, that's not a problem.
I see. So that could be scheduled on the general manager's report next week on that. If so, Mr. Weigel, if you choose to do that, you feel free to address that in your report. That would be one way. The other way is to agendize it and go through the whole thing. But I think for the interim, that may help matters. I think the issue of whether or not to open the office, that does could become an agenda item. Although it's really could be up to Mr. Weigel unless we instruct him one way or the other. It's really kind of his call. So, the agenda item would be to instruct the general manager to have the office open or to create some policy about having the office open. That would be our agenda item. And I don't know, is that something that we're asking for at this point? Is that, Harry, Director Farmer, is that really kind of what you're asking for as a policy regarding the open office?
Well, first, I wasn't asking for a policy. I was asking for an agenda item to discuss and perhaps us vote on, reopening the office, and as a subset, making a policy as to when the office should be open and under what circumstances should it not be open.
Okay, I think that clarifies matters. Okay, anything else? Okay, I don't have anything. I do see folks out there. Okay, let's hear a little bit about what the public has to say. So, Ms. Dickinson, the floor is yours. Yeah, there you are. You're coming in.
Am I here?
Yes, you are. Well,
oh, okay,
yeah.
sorry about that. Yeah,
No problem.
it just seems that this board has great difficulty in coming to conclusions on what at least some of us who pay attention to these meetings in the public can make decisions without all of the, I think, unnecessary back and forth sort of bumbling that goes on. And so with this particular item now, it seems that the general manager was the one that made the decision, because I don't even recall in a board meeting about the office door being locked, unlocked, certainly understandable during the worst part of the pandemic. But I've seen people that work for the district in restaurants without masks on, and we in the public are going to restaurants, many of us. I mean, when does this, the Board of Supervisors have been meeting since what, December, November? What is the difficulty? Why is it that you can't just come to terms with something, make a decision, and go with it? I don't understand this unnecessary back and forth. Legal counsel just told you, President Howell, that the general manager could speak to this item today. In a few words, he said he could speak to it. But no, you've got to put it off another week. I mean, really and truly, people want to bring in their protest forms, have them stamped. Some people do, and they should be able to do that. This needs to be addressed now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. Okay, anybody else? Okay, nobody out there. Oh yeah, Ms. Bettenhausen, I see you're out there, so please come in. Welcome back.
Thank you. I did miss part of the meeting because I had to go up and get a piece of my homemade whole wheat banana bread to sustain me to the end. I want to say that I would like you to put on a future agenda, preferably imminent rather than far away, for the general manager of this district to report to us members of the public what exactly it is he does. I find myself unable to figure this out, and I have not had pleasant encounters with him directly. So I have not, as President Howell suggested last time, I have not contacted the general manager directly about this. I admit this right now, and I've just told you why. I would like to know, as a member of the public, how the general manager of the district, this Cambria Community Services District, spends his time. And I would like some specificity in that, please. And I would be very grateful to you, board, if you put this on a future agenda, not in closed session, but for public listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bettenhausen. Let me just say to respond briefly to that, these last, I just want to remind people out in the public is that the district website does have a place where you can ask for items to be put on the agenda. So those of you who have concerns that you want us to address, you might want to go look at the website because you can submit those concerns and ask for us to discuss them. All right, I think we're done with future agenda items at this point, and so we're getting ready to go to closed session, and I need to call for public comment on the closed session. I don't know that I need to. Mr. Carmel, do I need to actually recite the items?
You don't. The Brown Act does require you to identify what agenda item number it is, but not the items themselves. It's agenda item 10.
Yes, I see what you're saying. So this is agenda item 10, and I do see one public comment here. So one moment here. Okay, so Ms. Dickerson, would you please go ahead and speak?
Yes, thank you once again, President Howell. On this particular item, I have some serious concerns that I have raised partially through an email with all of you today on an action that was taken, and it should not have happened the way it happened. It is there in a PDF for you to look at. On another occasion, on March 24th and 25th of this year, I called the office to speak to General Manager Weigold. I was told on both days that he was not there. I asked, well, where is he? And I was told that he was in San Diego. I said, well, then who is covering for him? I was told that actually no one is covering for him. And I said, does the board know? And I was told that the president and the vice president knew about it. I contacted another director to find out if the general manager had informed the entire board, and was told by that director, no, he wasn't. Then I contacted another director to find out if that director had received an email from the general manager to say he was out of town. And that particular director refused to answer the question. So I am very, very disturbed by what I've learned. And believe me, I will expose this. And folks, if you, the board, are not willing, the executive team, to share with your own board that your general manager is not present, then if you're not willing to do your job and share with your fellow directors, then we have a problem. And we have a problem that Mr. Weigold is missing in action, because I've called several days to speak to him, only to find out that he's not there. So if I can do some oversight, I think maybe you're the ones that are supposed to have the oversight. You're going into closed session. It says in the agenda, performance evaluation. I think you need to start giving some serious thought to how dedicated and committed Mr. Weigold is to his job. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. See, do we have anybody else out there? Hopefully just a very short few seconds here. Sometimes people don't really catch on. This is going to be your last shot, folks. Okay, going once, going twice. All right, seeing no public comment, we will now adjourn to closed session. So,
Say, Don, excuse me, President Howell, I just want to bring something up quickly. Has nothing to do with the meeting necessarily. Is everybody else that has you on the screen right now, have you been noticing this yellow hue that's been there? See, it's not there right now. It just keeps ebbing and flowing. So it was white there for just, there it is white now, but it's been yellow, there's yellow again. Is anybody else noticing this?
I am too.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'd just be
Well,
curious to know why that's happening.
We'll put that on a future agenda.
yeah, there will. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's go over to the.
Yeah, let's go to
Now
the
let's try
private-
doing some business.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're having too
Okay.
much fun. Okay, so okay, we'll see you all in just a couple of, as long as
Yeah.
it takes to get you into the next meeting. Okay.
Yeah. Bye bye.
All right, here we go. I'm leaving this one here.